Hello, everyone. Welcome back to day two of Cascadia. I am joined by the extremely renowned Andre. Do you want to say hello and, I guess introduce yourself to everyone who already knows you?
Hey, my name is Andre from the Metropole Grid. I am very excited to be joined. I don't think you introduced yourself by Yasengrin SC. We are part of the remote casting team. It is West Coast Nationals at Cascadia. There's like 50 people playing this weekend. It's an incredibly big event.
Yeah, it is great to see events this big like continuing to happen throughout the year, and we've got hopefully leading up to a fun and well attended Worlds. But yesterday we got to see so many fantastic games. We got to see a lot of different style of rush, both corps and runners try and put their mark on the meta. And it's I think one of the cool aspects of this meta is that there's so much variety on what people are bringing and what people like are winning with. It was very neat to see. We had quite a variety yesterday.
Yeah, we're going to be cutting to a top eight, mind you. This is now top eight double elimination. So we'll be playing 40-minute rounds, and players will be playing one side matchup against their opponents, and they'll continue playing until there's only one player left who hasn't taken two losses. I was able to catch up a bunch on the stream yesterday, but Jeff, could you maybe do a quick recap of what the meta looked like yesterday and what we're expecting to see today in the top eight? What looks good?
So, I mean, we got a real treat yesterday. We got to see a whole lot of Sokka's games. I think we might have seen two or three of, I think just two of his games, but
Yeah, that sounds
he
right.
was piloting a Glacier Ag Infusion and his kind of patented Reg Lat decks and doing quite well. We might even have him on stream again, it looks like, based on trying to guess by hands and IDs here.
I think
But
those are Sokka's hands.
we also saw a lot of we saw some interesting sports medal lists, and we saw a lot of ESSA yesterday, though I honestly have to go and check the cut to go and see what the conversion ended up looking like. It was an event that was pretty heavily dominated by Shaper and Anarch overall in terms of representation, and Corps were pretty split across the board. Wayland did not really make it into
No.
the top, into anywhere near the top. We did get one near Earth hub piloted by Hams, just making it in as the last seed at number 8. But we're in for a large amount of HB, a good amount of PE. We got to see, and we'll probably hopefully see later, Penguin's very interesting personal evolution PE list. And then, yeah, some Sable, some Freedom, which is quite spicy, some ESSA. For those of us who have been doing about Hoshiko forever, like myself, have to eat a little crow. Now, a single Hoshiko got into the top 8 here at this 50-person event. But what we're seeing really is some very, very fast games overall. Runners are often only installing 0 to 1 breakers to making it in. We actually didn't quite have a kit landed the cut, but we do
Oh,
have two
wow.
lats, an Arasana, which, judging by it being Man of the Moon, I would say with high confidence is a World Tree list. Actually,
It
we have the
is.
list. I haven't opened it up yet.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can confirm it is.
Um,
65 cards, I think.
yeah, I think that sounds about right. So I don't know. This will be a very interesting day. We've seen one Thule make it in as well. So that archetype is managing to make it through. Did not quite get Santa over the line, but I think Solomir is one of the testing on that testing team and probably has a lot of reps on it just the same. But this looks like it is. This is presumably then Sokka and Hams, I believe.
I believe that's right.
That we're
So for those who are watching, how this works is only in the first round of the tournament. The first seed will play the eighth seed, the second versus the seventh, and so on and so forth. And one of the advantages of being in the first seed or the higher seed in any of these pairings, specifically Sokka, undefeated, mind you, 27 points across the weekend so far, he gets to pick which side of the matchup he wants to play. So while deck lists are going to be open throughout this entire cut, people are going to know exactly what cards everyone brought to this tournament. Sokka can make the decision. Does he want to play Lat into Near Earth Hub, or does he want to have Essa run into his Ag Infusion? And I think that's an interesting choice to make. I think we've seen a bit of Essa into Ag Infusion yesterday on the stream. I'm not sure what side of that you want to choose. I'm not sure what sort of NEH this is. I'm assuming it might be that sort of horizontal, like the sort of Rangi Doge lists we've been seeing since Cascadia last year.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, looking at Hamza's list, it is exactly that. So it's got, it has actually zero total ice, 27 assets, and 10 agendas. I think all seven of them give the runner a tag when scored, or seven of them give a tag when scored.
Yeah.
One of them gets a tag when stolen. I could see Sokka deciding to say that, you know what, the lat deck is, it's packing basically its entire program suite, with the exception of Parisha, is revolves around breaking ice. And so he may decide that he would rather take his odds as the Ag Infusion. He does have a border control, which is an extra little bit of a lever against the Essa decks they may not be building towards. But at the same time, Essa has proven to be quite robust and able to present a lot of challenge. Judging by the action we're seeing on screen, though, it looks like Sokka is
Cool.
choosing to run. So we'll get to see how Sokka takes this angle of attack against this NEH kind of combo kill list.
I'm fascinated by this. I think this card came up when it was released, right? Cupulation is a card I don't think I've seen too much of, and it's seeing more play in Shaper decks, unlike a lot of the Rebellion Without Rehearsal criminal cards, than in criminal decks. And this card not only gives you some flexible HQ multi-access, but I think the big interaction here is that you can steal a win condition away from the corporation and just never let go of it. That's really important for this NEH deck that has a large part of its win condition attached to the singleton copy of End of Line. If Sokka cups the end of the line, do you think this corp deck can win?
So I think, like, in theory, yes. The neat thing about orbital superiority in this
Hmm.
style of list is it is a, if you really squint, you get to you can call that a
End of the
backup
line.
end of the
Yeah.
line. It just takes a little bit of work, but the deck has a lot of different ways to generate tags. It has wage workers. I think actually a very interesting new include in the deck is a Vera Ivanov,
Yeah, there's two Veras.
Shaskaya. Yeah,
Yep.
there's two Veras here. I imagine this is mostly for dealing with Steelskin scarring, so probably to be a little bit less relevant in this matchup, but does open up some interesting kill lines when stuff is stolen at awkward times, or scored, I guess, at awkward times for the runner, depending on the board state. I
Yeah,
think
I'm
it's a
wondering
very interesting include.
if Hams is just going to try and tempo out some agendas with a Vera and target out things like Deep Dive. Again, we talked about no ice in this deck, and while there are a lot of assets you can touch at the wrong time that do bad things to you, things like Behold, there is no, I don't remember the name of the 3-1 agenda that gives you tags. That's not in this list. We're looking at Fly on the Walls as a 3-1, but sometimes it actually might be
Yeah,
hard
yeah.
to
There's
like
no
run three
there's no
centrals.
Oracle think tank, and so it it actually, to me, not having the Oracle think tank opens up centrals to a lot more pressure than
Yeah.
the deck had without them. And so I think it'll be interesting to see how Sokka chooses to adapt. I think Sokka's deck is probably set up to have a couple of different options here. Either he depending on his draw, he may have the tools to just control the board. Like if he finds
Yep.
Hannah and then SMC early, suddenly he can just check most remotes, just trash the stuff that needs to go, and kind of control the entire board. And the NEH doesn't have a scoring plan. It's gonna probably have 5 cards in hand a lot of the time, so even just the lat draws can make its kill combo a little bit inconsistent. It would need to be something like Land of Reaper and a Mindscaping and an end of the line to deal with a 6 card hand. So, I think, as we talk through these lines, I can see why Zaka chose the matchup. I think for me, as someone who is less confident against this style of NEH list, I might roll the bones on Essa, but I do think, if you're Sokka and you think uh, you can just play the correct lines consistently, that probably is better than taking the sometimes slot machine style sabotages that Essa can provide.
Yeah, mind you, talk about Saga, obviously. You might know that name, our 2-time world champion, but he also just came in last weekend, flew across the country. Mind you, a Canadian player, went down to Boston to take the East Coast American Nationals. There's there's a good chance that he could do 2 Nationals 2 weeks in a row in person play, which is, I think, totally unheard of. So that is, definitely a narrative here that Sokka is fighting for. On the other side, mind you, Hams, if you're not familiar with the name, I believe Hams also a Canadian player, top 16 at Worlds in Toronto, if I'm not mistaken, playing, I want to say a Dow Salonga deck, if it's been a while, but also like definitely a
Yeah.
grinder of a player.
I know. I'm like trying to remember how to look up results because Hams is like not an unhurt, not someone coming out of the blue. Hams has a
No, not
real
at all.
record and has done a lot of good placements, especially over the last 2 years. So would not be shocked to see him do well here. I think there's some funny business with playing around with cuts, being a little playful. I expect we're about to get started on round one of day two, the top eight double limb cut with Sokka playing Lat and Hams playing NEH with Sokka as the higher seed, so choosing this matchup.
Say you get a DJ Fenris down. Do you think you're going Lou? You think you can afford to go Lou in this matchup? Or do you want to go Sable and get those extra clicks? I love Lou into the acid matchups.
I actually, I think if you see it early in the game, that is like one of those signals for Sokka, I think, where you can say, yeah, I don't need to go. Deep dive is not going to be my like necessary win condition. When you
Yeah.
even look in like Sokka's write-ups, he's like, this isn't a deep dive deck. It includes deep dive as tech for particular matchups. And I would be a little surprised if this is one of those matchups that he feels like he needs the deep dive tech for. I think, if you can get that early Lu, I suspect that, Sokka can just run down essentially all the assets and not get too punished here. It becomes,
Even
very difficult to even get the like Oppo researches up to threat 4 without Hams putting himself in a lot of danger to just suddenly lose on centrals.
And I think that's the coolest thing, right? Like we talked about no ice in this deck. So while we do have 5 icebreakers, we also do have 3 simul chips. There's a chance that Sokka can be as aggressive as possible, just simul chipping back in that same copy of Copulation and functionally adding a trash cost to Oppa researches. You can just steal them and then either go cash into multi-access or just trash the program and then the Oppa research goes into archives. With also, we have an option of DJ Fenris for what's going to be an unprotected HQ for the whole game. With Steve Cambridge, that can be, what is it, 9 simul chips potentially? 6, I think. Actually, 6. No, 9. I think
No,
it's a bit
it's
much.
5 because you give up unless you can offer a better card on the final
Oh
side.
yeah, it's 5. Yeah, still that's a
Yeah,
lot. That's a lot of options.
yeah. 5 uses of cupulation is very very good. It's otherwise the simul chip is probably not that good in this matchup. Like Sokka
No.
does have a decent number of dead draws in his list. Um, and someone asked in the chat, deck lists are not currently public, but we do have access to them, so we probably won't spell them out card by card at this point in time, but we'll
Yeah,
be
those
able
will
to
be
talk about
shared
the contents.
in time for sure. Again, we need to give a huge shout out. Jeff and I are both phoning in remote. Jeff did a whole bunch of the stream yesterday with some other folks joining, and all this production is happening locally from Whiteblade, who is one of the big organizers, not only behind the NPC in general, but of course Cascadia for now 2 years going. So shout out to Whiteblade for putting the show on. We're just we're watching, we're having a great time, and it looks like we're off. Top cut is off.
Yeah.
It looks like.
What do you think you're looking for as Hams here? And like maybe this is an archetype that neither of us play, but I think it's an interesting question of what are you trying to do here? How are you trying to set this up as the corp?
I think you want 3 assets on the table. I think you need to read if Sokka is going to interact or not. I think if you can afford an early Behold to put Sokka in an ugly spot where he has to consider maybe clearing the tags, because technically if you do have the Mindscaping end of line, like you have the perfect draw that soon, it can be okay for you. Otherwise, the assets on the table, like setting up 2 Reaper functions. Of course, this is Lat, so keeping cards in hand is going to be important, and Stone Chip Chart Room is always a card you can respond to if somebody reses a Reaper function. That's going to be tricky, but I think here you just want gas on the table so you can present more cards than Sokka can figure out how to check if he doesn't draw a Hannah.
Yeah, it did look like when Sokka was leafing through his hand that there may have actually been a Hannah in hand. So I think this is going to open up Sokka to have a very dominant position on this board state. Click 1 dieseled and then hit a sure gamble. I feel like this is at this point Sokka's taking some time to think about how optimally, like how cleanly do I want to sequence this? Do I need to actually contest all these remotes? Because one of the things that I think is somewhat true of these NEH lists is the Rashida Fire is obviously something you don't want to see happen, but you might be able to get away with it in certain cases. But it looks like Sokka is going to install 2 Stone Ship Chart Rooms and then play a Creative Commission and then use the Lat trigger. Ask opponent, do you have a Spin Doctor use here? And if not, take his card draw.
Federal fundraising on a ham side. I think that might be one of the highest priority trashes early. Obviously, if it's Rashida, it goes. There's also Check as Science and Behold, so just like touching cards can be dangerous. But federal fundraising is that acceleration, that card draw that Hams needs, the filtering, to be able to build a board state that is good for him. I think we just drew a Check as there, but This is not a daily business show deck, so all the filtering there is going to come from federal fundraising. A big thing with the Near Earth Hub is that is basically a mandatory extra draw every turn, so HQ can flood up as much as Capillation's the only HQ multi-access here, so ensuring the filtering isn't too strong is often a pretty nice start to slow the deck down and make it a bit more inconsistent.
Yeah, it is interesting how federal fundraising, like these decks did stop running DBS, and federal
Yeah.
fundraising doesn't actually shuffle the agenda away.
Oh, nope,
It
just
just like
kicks the
kind
can.
of it just kicks the can a little bit down the road. And we do see a hand that hit the table, so Sokka's going to have, I think, a lot of game here. 2 stone ships on the table also makes him quite safe to a lot of kill plans.
Yeah.
He's going to hand it, looks like, take out the federal fundraising.
Hannah's just good in like 3 different angles, right? You have that panic, gain a click,
Yeah.
remove a tag if you hit a checklist or a behold too late in the turn. On the turn that you want to deep dive now, we basically can steal 6 points if we see 2 3-pointers. It's totally possible. This actually can be if Sokka steals a single point early, 3 stone ship, he is pretty safe for a bit. Maybe an Oppo connects here, but we're gonna need a Rashida to really kind of afford that and push ourselves forward.
Yeah, it's the NEH does have 5 cards on the table now, but also only has 5 credits, hasn't generated any credits yet, and so even playing the Oppo can be a little tough on the wallet here. And so Hams has no starter turn triggers here, is taking his draw, and now needs to think about what is happening next. There's the Regalith mining license. This is basically the econ on the list.
Yep.
And it's going to res it for 2, click it 3 times. Melange Mining Corp never left us. It's now just called Regalith Mining License.
And this matters because not only the credits for the Oppo and obviously the Threat 3 Oppo we're a bit far away from, as much as Sokka might not want to interact with Centrals until he's striking distance of taking the game, but also things like Holloman. There's 3 in this list. So if there's a 4-2, a 3-1, anything like that on the table, you can fast advance while having a bit. Ooh, Behold there. That's going to be 4 credits for 2 tags, and then you can choose to trash it. That will turn on Oppo. I'm not sure if Sokka is really incentivized to trash this card on the table.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, like, when you check the beholds, you just are. It being on the table is kind of nice for you as the runner. If the beholds in HQ, it becomes you kind of do have to trash it. We're seeing Sokka denote a token. Looks like maybe there's a fun little cat face on that token, but a little bit hard to tell with this contrast.
Yeah, you're allowed to mark servers that you've obviously contained note taking, but the rules say clearly if you want to know you've run something, you can put a token on it. And I saw actually a fair few other people do that over this weekend, which I actually haven't seen a lot of people do that in person.
Yeah, it's I think quite smart. So we're now seeing sure gamble and I think clear the 2 tags. Wheels does make it so that even when these beholds get fired, it's kind of just a trade of 4 credits for 4 credits and a little bit of time for the runner that goes away. Another federal gets fired this turn. It was on the board last turn.
What does that tell us?
I think, very interesting. I mean, to some extent, I think it is to me, it suggests that Hams feels like he's behind on the board, and he wanted to represent being ahead on the board previous turns where, like, oh, you have to start checking these. These are, agendas or that maybe I can score for tempo or, the Reaper functions that are going to end the game for me. Was that
an Oppo? I think that was an Oppo. Was that taken back?
But nothing got trashed, so I think it might have just been a mistake.
I worry that Hams might have paid for that and not got the money back. So we're going for 2 installs here. Mind you, we're not going left or right. We're filling in those empty holes. So some of those cards are older than the position that it might kind of portray.
If that's something where, as a player, if that bothers you, you can always ask your opponent, hey, is there a different way we can present this information? And if they, that's something that you can also get a judge to help you with if needed. Though I've never found a player where I ask, hey, would you mind representing the state instead, and like sliding the rules in if you prefer that. I've never heard someone say no or fight that in any way, shape, or form. Sokka going after the federal fundraising, trying to reduce this filtering. Sokka is just like, this is the nice thing I think about just playing boring econ cards.
Yep.
You just are very consistent in having lots of money, finding the one of wheels like in the mulligan is just a really good, like, it just set him up for a lot of success here.
We got the Anacom down. Now, that does have a bit of an impact. It means the Verifier event trashes technically pushes you slightly forward, but one card sneaking out. And this is the play pattern you can see from Sokka. Generally, first click or 0th click, if you want to call that, will hand us something on the table. That gives us 4 clicks to interact or to react to having tags that we have to remove, something like that. But Sokka probably doesn't want to go central servers. I think one of the big things here is that Hams has to decide whether he feels comfortable enough to feed a Degree Mill onto the table so that Sokka will be forced to be on threat 3. But at the end of the day, also, Degree Mill has an additional cost to steal, so he can always refuse to. I think threat 3 here might be potent.
Yeah. I'm hold on for 1 second. I'm getting a call. I'm gonna have to let you lead the stream for a moment.
Yeah, no, it's all good. So Ham's thinking here on what to build out on the server. We have that regolith we're going to finish down. Sokka did set up that Telework contract. A lot of money on there. There is technically a window here for the Oppo research. We're going to throw that out. We're at threat 0. So it's going to be 2 credits and a click for 2 tags. Now, I don't think Sokka's going to use Hannah to remove those tags and push forward. Mind you, that's a 1 of in the deck, so it's hard to recur with Steve Cambridge if that does come down here. But I believe we have 1 new card on the table. We're going to see if we want to check that. We have the money. Mind you, those Opera researches, we haven't seen a Spin Doctor yet. And of course, this deck is on 3 Spin Doctors, so those will be coming back over and over again. Other stuff on the table, mind you, Reaper functions. Even if you have all 3 of them on the table, with things like Onacom, let alone 3 copies of Stone Ship Chart Room, it's going to be really hard to find a lethal kill line here. So there is a lot that Hams has to do to potentially tax out Sokka and put him in a situation where the second Oppo, the third Oppo, really keeps him down. Click for 3 cards on the Telework contract. We're going to move 2 tags here. May not actually make a Hannah run. Still, up on 6 credits, SMC on the table. Now, SMC for Cupulation, that's probably the most important program that Sokka can pivot here. It technically doesn't trash cards when it steals them for 1 credit, so that beats the sort of Oppo research, let alone you can run HQ and try and find those very game-winning operations, whether it's the Oppo research, the end of the line, the mindscaping. All those are incredibly valuable here. 10 credits for Hams. Sitting on a table of which we only know 1 card. And mind you, with NEH, we're expecting to see at least 2 agendas. There's 10 in the deck, but probably 2 in hand at this point, even more. No filtering. There are some face downs in archive, so Spin Doctor could be waiting in the wings. And again, this deck has no ice. We're looking at 27 assets. So as soon as Sokka feels comfortable on game point, you can just peel out with Hannah. You can get that 4 or 5 click turn potentially. 6 click turn even, and just deep dive centrals, hopefully find 2 Degree Mills and close the game out. So Hams has to make the game about the table and ensure that he can keep Sokka busy enough, as much as Sokka seems in a pretty safe position. Looks like he's considering there. That's a trick shot.
Yeah, that trick shot ends up being really handy because it even like Sokka can play the trick shot and then get the Parisha out of his deck and have it pay for that SMC search cost and just get things on the road. And that's like the only program he's going to need. I don't think he even needs to, like, he's probably trying to not steal agendas. I think one thing he's probably thinking about is, like, if I play this trick shot and see a Behold, how am I going to clear the tags? Because I think as Sokka here, you're mostly just trying to figure out how can I stop myself from losing long enough to exhaust the corp's ability to win. And
there's a trick shot, mind you.
Making the call that he can do the trick shot.
So good. He's just going to see the top 2 here, mind you. He'll get 6 credits to run the remote server. Top card looks like it is a Behold. Going to have to reveal that, pay 4 credits for 2 tags. Now, this is interesting because you're right. If he wants to trash it, he's going to trash it. So Opera Research is online. He's going to trash something on the table anyways with those 6 credits. And Rashida, 1 card down. That's going to come down for 1 credit on the trick shot. Still 5 left to burn. And yeah, you're totally right. SMC into Parisha is another very good option. Actually gives you the +2 credits every turn. And you're probably going to be checking a card a turn. So why not get those 2 credits for assets? Checking the oldest card on the table?
Yep.
Or not oldest. That used to be a regolith.
Oh, you're right. That did used to be the regolith. Yeah, this is. If this was me, I would probably be asking the cards be set up in a slightly different way. But we're gonna go to that. Access is a Gaslight. That is fantastic for Sokka. That's one of those cards that gives the corp opportunities if you make small mistakes. And so taking that off the table does take out that window. Sokka has only 2 tags. We're still also only on threat 2, so I would not be shocked. Even though Sokka is not on that many total credits here, I would not be that shocked for him to just clear these 2 tags and say, I've done enough for this turn. It's going to be very difficult for you to punish me. I could just do something like click Telework and then clear off an Oppo research.
He's also now found two beholds. One's on the table, one's in the bin. So the only other trap on Axis Trap here, there's two copies, if I'm not mistaken, of Check Asylum. That'll only be a single tag. Now, money is tight. You're right. He has access to telework. He wants to clear two tags. I don't think he's handed yet. He might be tempted to try and use those Parisha credits. But here, yeah, a safe line. You can just clear the tags and hold on. And worst case, yeah, on thread 0, that's just going to be two more tags next turn, and that'll be out two copies of Oppo. Looks like we're checking one of these. We're going to roll the die to figure out which way fate goes.
Oh yeah,
And
this is a Hannah run, so it is pretty free as long as it's not a checkist.
that'll be Regolith for one credit on top of the
Yeah,
Parisha.
looks like that Regolith is going to go, but that is clickless. Gonna click 3 off the telework, and then I think clear the tags for 4 credits. So Sokka is only on 3 credits here. So if Hams can find a way to install 2 threatening cards, and then play an Oppo research, he won't have a ton of credits, but that might be an angle for him to get into this, like take control of this game.
Now, Sokka, mind you, is checking at the end of the turn, matching that lat hand size to NEH. A really big thing is that there is a Spin Doctor on the table. If you want to deny that card draw, you can always react and technically res a Spin Doctor. In theory, Sokka could respond by trashing a Stone Chip. I don't think that's going to happen. We got more cards on the table. Click for a credit. Again, we're going to keep at those 8 assets, or the 8, different remote servers. Prisha refills and no Oppo research. Sokka here needs to find the next econ card to keep pushing him forward, but with one Parisha, he's just about able to trash one thing a turn at almost no cost. The most expensive trashable here is what, Wage Workers on 4?
Yeah. Okay, we're seeing a Malia use. Looks like
Arresting
it's arresting everyone's favorite bicycle riding, or maybe is Hannah the dog, or have we determined that?
Hannah's definitely the dog.
Okay. Yeah. Now, Malia-ing the wheels, I think, is a very interesting approach here. I think, unfortunately for Hams, Sokka looked like he had another trick shot in hand, but looks like he's just going to spend 2 real credits and 2 credits off of Parisha to go and deal with the Malia Soloka, and then plan out the rest of his turn from there. It's like
that's
telework is going to be used.
It's just a bit of a road bump. Like, we still have access to Hannah this turn. Without the Parisha, we might not be too interested. Telework going to get finished, end up on the floor, back up on the table here. But that is technically a tech card if you're playing things like No Free Lunch, ways to avoid tags. The Malia can show up there. Blanking a Miss Bones could be kind of awkward in early econ turns, but I felt like a relatively reasonable trade in Sokka's favor. Still, though, there might be more cards on the table that turn that are sneaking by. Is it only 6 credits for Hams? So I don't think we're worried about any sort of fast advance with Holloman.
Yeah, Hollow Man Fast Advance does seem a little bit out of reach here, even though that might be kind of the angle this deck is going to use to try and win here.
Sokka throwing out a Simul Chip.
Yeah, I think, while the can recur an infinite number of copulations is like an interesting idea, I think in practice, it's just not that essential of a card in this matchup when you can just make a lot of money. It's actually one thing I'm a little surprised about, and maybe I missed when the overclock was drawn, that the overclock wasn't used to trash the Malia instead of the quote-unquote real credits.
Yeah, I reckon if you want to trash 2 things a turn, you're right, because it was just Parisha credits, but there's the second Oppo research we've seen before any recursion shoots in. That's going to be 2 tags, again, for 2 credits. Here we've seen, I don't think any of Rashida's, so down to 4 credits with 2 Regoliths gone. We're probably going to need on Ham sides a Rashida into Your Digital Life for an economic recovery. You see it?
Yeah, sorry.
You see a pinhole in Sokka's hand, and obviously there's no ice, so nothing's going to be protected, but it's a really cool play, the idea that even on a deep dive turn, you can like pinhole centrals and get a successful run while touching something else, or pinhole, get a Steve Cambridge trigger. Like, there's a bit of utility to it, as much as it's not the most important card in this matchup, unless Sokka can find a creative way to get extra value from it.
Yeah, I think that is a thing for Sokka to keep in mind. I think Sokka's game plan here really is still, this board is not out of control. He can probably try and just manage the corp here and just trying to figure out what the effective way to do so is. I think the players sound like they're maybe talking about what cards were installed. We're going to see a Hannah on, I think this is one of the remotes that was not installed this last turn. It is a Degree Mill, and now Sokka has to make a tough choice. I think leaving it makes a lot of sense. It's not at risk of being scored right away.
Yeah.
And so gives...
If
Yeah.
that 5/3 didn't have that card has additional cost tax. As for the runner to steal it, they have to take 2 of their installed cards and shuffle them into their deck, which obviously puts them behind on tempo, but more importantly, it also will put you on threat 3. So Sokka understands it's going to be there, and until we're on what is it, 8 credits, we can't threaten to fast advance that out with the likes of moving a Holloman, paying that extra 6 credits on top.
Yep. It does look like a Spin Doctor was rezzed here at the end step to deny a lat draw and also to allow Hams to overwrite this Degree Mill
Hmm.
and have it for safety. So I think Hams felt like, okay, this is a play I have to do anyway. Let's deny a little bit of extra value, which is a very nice, like a nice spot by Hams on how to try and generate some more of an edge in this matchup.
Now, what do you think you're shuffling back here? Are you just going for the attritional value of the Oppo researches? I'm not sure if any of those assets are incredibly important. Can you just put back enough beholds to be annoying? But it looks like Regolith and 1 Oppo was the choice from Hams.
Yeah, interesting. So the Degree Mill actually wasn't overridden, which maybe suggests there's a second Spin Doctor on the table, which wouldn't be too surprising given that we have 6 unknown assets out on the table, 1 Behold and the Degree Mill. There's the deck, and we've seen a bunch of other assets end up in the trash. There, like at a certain point, Hamza's deck is not that big anymore, so the likelihood that he's found a second Spin Doctor seems pretty high.
Yeah, this is a 49 card corp deck like you might expect, but of course, just about every turn you're drawing 2 cards, so the shelf life of the deck is relatively shorter in terms of just getting to that alternate lose condition.
Yeah. It looks like actually Hams even popped that Spin Doctor. He wanted to try and find the Regolith or the Oppa Research right away.
I think he has the end of line in hand.
I couldn't quite see the hand as well, or I missed it, but I
think I saw
it
Sundog.
makes some sense.
Yeah.
So
Now, Sokka here, 3 more cards on the table. Not maybe even, no, it can't be 4 cards, 3 more cards on the table. So the weird things that can sneak up on him are things like if you res a Wage Workers on the table, you triple advance. Now, that's going to be a money problem for Hams to threaten that. But you could score out a fly in the wall, have a click left to do tag punishment. Now, if it's just an end of the line, that's not enough tag punishment, but you can always trash a Hannah. You can slowly work on the stone chips. That's incredibly expensive and probably not close enough to a win condition. But there are some threats on the table here that involve giving a lot of tags, then suddenly moving a Holloman over, doing orbital damage. It's tricky, but Hams' lines here are going to be very, very narrow.
yeah, I feel like as Sokka, I might read the Regolith shuffle as okay. Hams did not draw, like Hams is missed on his econ here,
Yeah.
and so the most important thing, like a way to play this, is to try and just check these 3 remotes and deal with like deal with any potential econ that has landed on the board.
Rolling a
Looks
6.
like that is rolling a 6. Going into this new card, it is a Hollow Man. Parisha credits cannot be used on Hollow Man because Shapers are not allowed to have good cards.
Only for assets, it says. It's easily forgotten, but that is going to be an upgrade that stays there. And Holloman, mind you, obviously not on top of an agenda or another advanceable card, doesn't matter because, of course, start a turn, Hams can res that and then move it. It's going to be a bit expensive. You need at least 6 credits to threaten that, but that is good to know that threat there is on the table, and eventually Sokka might have to feel like he has to interact with it.
Yeah, if Hams can fire off of your digital life, suddenly it becomes much more kind of approachable for him. There's even a line where I think he can, if he draws exactly correctly, like he can pre-res the Hollow Man, move it onto like a orbital superiority, play your digital life, and still score the orbital superiority or something, or fly in the wall that turn. Fly in the wall is probably the way he wants to try and do it, but it is going to be a bit of a challenge here.
Mind you, if you're seeing the stream slow down a bit, that is on our end too. We're seeing this a bit remotely. I know there were some technical issues, but bear with us as we get the stuff sorted out. As it looks like Sokka is rolling a die and checking maybe one of the cards on the table. Looks like the one
looks like
closest to him, just about.
I think it's one of the 3 cards that was installed last turn. It looks like hopefully we're not just going to be stuck in a bit of a loop here, which is what happened yesterday. But it looks like we're just going to get a little bit of a slideshow while I think Eric's computer cools down a little bit. Let's all pray for some ice packs.
Bring him some ice.
Yeah.
Yeah, last night I think in the final round of the event, Whiteblade's computer did overheat a bit. Had some GPU issues in the last, which was such an exciting matchup, mind you, versus Sokka and Man of the Moon. Turns out Sokka won that matchup, went undefeated here. But do bear with us if this becomes a bit of a slideshow for a minute. I can confirm I hear myself. Welcome back. This is round two. We are
Okay.
mostly through a game here. Thank you for your patience with some technical difficulties. Shout out to CTZ helping out Eric on the far side of Americas here. This is upper bracket currently in our top 8 double elimination. This is round 2 on the right. That's Man on the Moon. That's Abraham playing that sort of PD list you might be super familiar with. Quite a fun deck. And on the left side, Solomir playing some mark-based good stuff, regular, criminal. That is Sable. Have a mark down the table, and board state looks like a lot of ice. We have 2 icebreakers, but not a lot of credits. But we're up 4-0 for the runner.
Yeah, runner feels like, I think, in a nice position, even though there's not many credits for the runner. There's not that many credits for the corp. It feels like we're an icebreaker away, maybe some econ, but the Sables do tend to have a lot of run-based econ. This deck is on Chesvies, which are nice, but 2x bankrolls even, which can be very hard to get rolling on this kind of board state. So
This board state's so funny. You see installed coder, install fractor, and the only 2 ice res are drafters. I've no doubt Solomir figured out where those were with his face sooner than later, but at least that means there's only one more sentry in the list, so you can go pretty far without finding out you're a killer.
yeah, for sure. The HQ or the R&D runs is looking a little bit safer, though the ablatives being back online is definitely. Actually, there's only one
Only
ablative
one.
in this list.
Yeah.
Wow, that makes things actually significantly safer for the runner here, where they don't have to throw out. They're not worrying risking as much tempo going for some of these poking runs. Actually, yeah.
One of the worst face checks in this deck specifically is actually a gatekeeper, and obviously you want to get that res so it gets cheaper, but just giving 3 cards in hand for that Your Digital Life type deck, a bit of a combo deck, is actually incredibly relevant. Is that an Ikwa?
Is that an ick? Wow,
That's
we're back
game.
just in time for that to be the game.
That's going to be 7 points
Well,
there. Looks like there was some points in archives guarded by Spin Doctor Magnet being shown on the remote server, but Solomir just running through there, getting a mark, hitting the central servers, forcing some ice reses. We're not going to see all of archives there. I'm not sure if we saw Greasing the Palms or Your Digital Lives. Rashida was going to be on top of that Tranquility Home Grid to give some more acceleration, but just some criminal fundamentals. Run some central servers. That's not too bad of an idea against HB decks.
Yeah, it's almost one of the reasons where I don't like this PD as much, because I feel like it's actually even softer to crim despite having this orthogonal win condition. It's just a little more prone to an Amakua snowballing out of control against you. And obviously that's not actually what happened in this game. But it looks like Solomir did a very nice job applying pressure, keeping PD down, and probably got some good rips as well to keep things going his way.
Yeah, there's no Mavars in this list. You're right. If you're going, you are definitely flying, and they have to take the time off to purge, which is pretty difficult. Maybe they can red level clearance to get something on the table first. But Solomir taking that, dropping Man of the Moon down to the lower brackets. Unfortunately, this is our first finish round, so we don't have any other results. Mind you, these are just single-sided rounds, so it's probably like 30 minutes left in the round. Round 2 just finished, upper bracket. Is this the end of round 2 for everyone?
I don't know
I've seen no results
exactly,
yet.
but yeah, it might. They've been doing results sort of at the end. I've generally seen them suddenly put a bunch of results in all at once, so I'm not exactly sure how that's working there. I don't think they have results reporting on for players to self-report, which I think makes sense when you hit event size of certain sizes.
I think Alex confirming in the chat, there's about 20 minutes left in the round. However, obviously this game has come to a close. So I imagine we might just throw to a break for 20 minutes, Jeff.
Yep. Yeah, I think that makes the most sense. Apologies, everyone. It's good. There's been a lot of upgrades to the setup. I think round 3 is coming up in about 20 minutes. And actually probably about 25, honestly. Between if there's 20 minutes left on the clock. And we'll play round 3. We'll go to lunch break, and but we've got potentially rounds 3 through 7, maybe even 8, all ahead of us. Should be some great Netrunner today. So please stick around, or come back here in about 20 minutes. We'll be here chatting, talking about this great game that we all enjoy. So yeah, thanks everyone, and we'll see you in about 20.
We'll be back. Hello and welcome to round 3. This is the West Coast Nationals Cascadia 50 players showed up this weekend, and we're down in the top cut to only 6 players left. My name is Andre from the Matchball Grid. We are part of the remote casting situation. I'm joined by Yusengren SC. Yusengren, how's it going?
It's going pretty good. We're glad to be back for round three. Hopefully, we can keep the technical goblins away.
We can only hope, mind you. We've had some technical issues on the first couple rounds. It looks like things might be a bit more fixed. So thank you so much for your patience. We are so back, is true. Now, just to catch up, this is a top cut. We had 8 players returning today. Mind you, a bunch of the other players have returned for a side event, and we're down to just 6 players. While we weren't able to see them in the top cut, leaving the bottom of the bracket is Penguin and Talk, leaving at 7th and 8th place correspondingly. So we're looking at 6 more players here fighting for that West Coast Nationals Championship title. Currently, the round we're looking at is Hams on the left playing Near Earth Hub. That was the matchup we saw in the first round. To some extent, we saw that Corp deck. Obviously, it's NEH. It's a bit of a kill deck with Check of Scions, with Beholds, and then about all the agendas just about to say the word tag on them. So end of the line Mindscaping can be a kill combo. On the right side, Man of the Moon, who is, mind you, these both players, I just want to double check what side of the bracket we're on. I think we're on the lower bracket here. So
Yeah,
whoever
we
loses
are.
this game, unfortunately, that'll be the end of their Cascadia run. And this is 65 card World Tree Arasana. How are you feeling about this matchup?
I mean, I suspect that World Tree has some edges here, but as we were talking about in between games off camera, this deck does have slightly less tech than Sokka's did, which was on wheels.
And
So
yeah,
this deck is on both Bones and Cupulation and also Parisha. So there's a lot of asset hate. There's not a lot of click gain advantage that is going to be able to be represented here unless Man decides to go into Sable to get some runs on HQ, though we could also see that DJ for Lou as a possibility. I think, though, there is a note where he has a lot of ways, Man of the Moon here has a lot of ways to generate value just on checking runs and making, 3 credits off of the
yep.
World Tree search, provided that card is moving his game plan forward. I think, unlike in Sokka in that matchup we saw before, where the simul chips were basically exclusively for cycling the cupulation, here they might even end up cycling coalescences for both off-turn draws as well as just more cash infusion, and turns more and more of the deck into just credit gain, which can be
Yeah,
a very important part of this matchup.
this is a World Tree deck. For those unfamiliar, it's quite an engine. We're looking at, again, 65 cards. So World Tree, that 6 cost 2 MU program, says the first successful run you make, you can trade one of your cards for another card of the same type in your deck, installing it for 3 credits less, trashing the original card. Now, this deck, the NEH deck, has no ice. So it's not going to be a struggle to get those accesses. Mind you, also, the World Tree is not going to be targeted by some of those NBN cards you might expect. Things like Amani Sanai, things like Self-Growth Program. None of those are available in this list. But it's now going to come down to keeping the economy up, paying for the opera researches, making sure you're not hitting checkists and beholds at the wrong time. But there is, still a fair bit of tech, and it's going to come down to how consistently can you get out of your deck, which means largely how consistently can you get World Tree down on the table. Also, it's worth noting things like Lilypad is a 1-of in this deck too. If you can set up a simul chip and SMC stuff like that, that sometimes is that 6th card in your hand on the runner's turn, or sorry, on the corporation's turn when you're getting that end of the line into Mindscaping combo, and sometimes that's also all you need to survive.
Yeah, there's also a cute T400 memory diamond, so it's actually possible to be at 7 cards without having to even pop a stone ship. It always costs you some resource, and you have to be careful about when you do it, but there's a lot of options here for Man of the Moon to try and negate some of the play here from NEH. But we're seeing a very, this is one of the ideal NEH turns. Install Rezo triggers, install 2 more cards. Only 3 credits, so the holds are actually not live, which is a big potential window for Man of the Moon here. But it is turn 1, so it's a little bit harder for the runner to punish that super cleanly.
Yeah, Abraham, mind you, on the right, he's also not on any burners. Sometimes that can really matter when you're trying to disassemble a combo. Also, no dirty laundry. So if we want to get our World Tree down cheaply and make that sort of coalescence push forward, we're looking at 3 overclocks and 3 trick shots, of course, with the open R&D. So we'll see how, if he wants to contest this, a Rashid on the table, a Regolith. We've also saw in the last games, Hams's money was relatively tight, and you have a lot of money you need to spend on a lot of Oppos, a lot of Beholds, stuff like that. So getting the money up is quite a concern sometimes. I think Rashid into YDL is probably one of your best early starts.
Yeah,
Telework,
for sure.
creative commission,
Telework,
throwing out a breaker.
discarding
It's
Breaker,
so
yeah.
interesting, mind you. This deck is iceless, which means not only do you have 5 icebreakers that are functionally useless, and mind you, they will interact favorably with World Tree, but also all the Trojans, barring Ika, are literally unplayable.
Yeah, there's not that many in the list, really. It is
Mhm.
Cubon and Ficerum as the
Hush,
only two, and Hush, thank you, yes. So that,
yeah,
but that's like,
it's not the
so
worst.
there's kind of, there's not, yeah, it's 9 cards out of 65. Probably something that Man of the Moon can deal with here. And like, to be honest, this looks like a nice setup for a turn 2 World Tree start taking over the board. Because Telework can be clicked here, I think. Or actually, no, it looks like Telework still has all 3 charges, but you might still think about clicking Telework once, throwing on the World Tree, and then getting Bones online ASAP to deal with this Wage Workers and Federal. Looks like we're getting a little bit of a request just to organize servers so that newest is always
On the
in
left,
order,
yeah.
which, yeah. Honestly, it's
Yeah.
going to make my job easier, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, chopping table, mind you, NEH gets that new card draw whenever you make a new server. Now that could be ice, but of course we're looking at agendas, assets, and upgrades in this list. And speaking of upgrades, of course, 3 copies of Hollow Man. And the kill combo actually can come relatively quickly as long as you have that modicum of, I think you need about 8 to 12 credits. The idea is that you have a Hollow Man, then you can quickly score out something like a fly on the wall, then use that tag, and as simple as end the line followed by mindscaping. You want to do it in the other order. That is 5 damage, I guess. So you were going to need maybe a bit more reach with other stuff on the table, like the Reaper functions, which there are 3 in this
Yeah.
list.
Yeah, the like most vanilla version of the combo is usually Reaper into end of the
Tag
line,
and the
but
line, yeah.
yeah. But the steel skins, or not the steel skins, the mindscapings can be part of combo lines, and in theory the deck can even have some combo lines now with orbital superiority.
Yeah.
Um,
Also,
so
Vera.
it's like,
Vera does do that 1 damage if you score out that fly on the wall. They are down to 4 cards in hand, so mindscaping end the line even there will connect. Your
yeah,
digital life,
looks like
healthy.
looks like your digital life, maybe. Yeah, I missed exactly all the details there, but we know that now Corp is at 11 credits. It did install a new card, and it's now on Man of the Moon to figure out how he's going to move forward here.
Now
Looks like
clicking
we're
to
going to
draw.
click to
Man of the
draw
Moon
first.
importantly mulligan, and this is actually a deck where paying attention to mulligan is incredibly important. I think he might have just drawn a Parisha, which is definitely a nice find in a 65 card pile, but I don't think he has access to the. It doesn't look like I saw a card that gives him access to the World Tree, which is definitely the priority as soon as possible if you want to consider running and touching cards. And also on turn 1, he didn't check anything, which sometimes on the first turn you want to kind of read your opponent. Are they checking? Are they not checking? And then use that to see how aggressively you can just put agendas on the table, or whether you want to keep the traps and centrals or on the board.
Yeah, for sure. I think Man of the Moon is now going to take a look at the list, which is a thing that you can do in Top Cuts, and it can be a very helpful way to assess what threats he does and doesn't have to think about. Because, for example, if he installs the Parisha and then runs a remote here, and it hits a behold, he will not have the clicks to go and clear off tags, and the game could be over as quickly as that. So I think he's going to take a long and hard think about what his options are here, and wants to probably see what the punishment is for trashing the Federal.
Ooh, nice overclock
And then
trading in for the wage
overclocking.
workers.
Yeah, I think that's a very nice call. And looks like, okay, we're just rearranging and
We're
explaining
redecorating
how the
together.
system works. Yeah,
This is my
I
system, and
think,
this is a good system.
yeah. I mean, it is a system that, having played against this NEH deck a lot, my opponents playing the NEH always use, so it's at least comfy for me. I'll say that much. A nice reset turn here, and Man of the Moon's credits are actually pretty fine into the Oppo here. So I like that. Like how Man of the Moon's approaching contesting all these assets. It's now on Hams to keep putting out new threats. Another Wage Workers hits the table, so we get 3 installs into the Oppo research. And this is the kind of fork that Oppo research is often at its best on, when you can create momentum and still kind of trade those credits and resources to the runner, and they have to handle. Looks like another overclock might have been drawn, which seems like a very nice pull here for Man of the Moon.
Yeah. So for a deck that can, be described as a pile of tech cards you can produce at the right time if you have a World Tree, cards like, oh man, what's the name of the tag-based connection that came out in Rebellion Without Rehearsal? The neutral card, Ferreira,
Yeah,
Carvalho,
I I think yeah, I
Valentina.
think Valentina. Yeah, I believe it's Valentina.
She doesn't see play as much as that is the card that you would want on your deck when you need to clear a whole bunch of tags against any given matchup. But we're gonna actually see Man of the Moon here physically, spend that basic action to clear every single tag that appears in this game if he thinks they're worth clearing. Now, Ham's there, Regolith Mining License, full art, just gonna take off that what is it, 9 credits. You pay 7 after the res, or you gain 7 after that res, and money now is really healthy on 17 credits. There's actually a chance if all the cards on the table are lining up that there can be a lethal combo here. Mind you, Gaslights are super important. Obviously, Holloman and an Agenda are going to matter. But unless we find a Stone Chip or we start checking the table, there's a chance that Man of the Moon is taking a risk here if he passes his turn over with even 5 cards in hand.
Yeah, it ends up being a pretty challenging line for it requires a pretty exact set of
Yeah.
card draws here, and there's not been much filtering for the corp, so I would not put it at a high risk for Man of the Moon if he
Nope.
doesn't deal with stuff. But like it's definitely something where I'm like, these Parisha credits are burning a hole in my pocket by not using them. It looks like Man of the Moon is going to go and trash the wage workers there, and then discarding 2 cards. It looks like,
Yep. It looks like a
and
turbine and
trying
a
to pick
buzzsaw hitting the bin.
trying to pick, I think, what the final card he wants to discard is here.
No
Gonna
World
be
Tree so
one
far.
simul chip. Yeah.
It's huge. Mind you, also, Arasana's ability is not entirely going to matter in this matchup when it comes to Trojans. You can still use that ability to install programs and get World Tree value to get some click compression, and that actually is quite valuable when you're click compressed, trying to make all these runs, touch cards, clear tags. But currently, it's been an entirely blank ID box until we get that World Tree set up. 3 more cards on the table, mind you. Drawing 2 cards a turn with the NEH and the mandatory draw, just drawing through a 65 card pile, looking for either one of the 3 muses, one of the 3 SMCs, or of course, one of the 3 world trees itself.
Yeah. Man of the Moon definitely having a bit of a tough draw here. And Hamda's NEH is really pushing forward. Looks like it was draw, use the was it just 4 draws here, or
Kind of looks like he might have hit the telework and just hasn't taken the credits
I
yet.
think he said hit the telework, but hasn't actually taken the credits yet. Okay, that makes some sense. Oh,
Oh, did
maybe
he miss
click
a
the
sure gamble
credits as
too?
well.
I think a sure gamble hit the bin as well.
Okay, that makes some sense. So yeah, Man of the Moon now, if if he does have any of those tutors for the World Tree, it could come online. This is actually a matchup where you could maybe leave a World Tree on a Muse because your MU is not going to be pushed that much otherwise.
Yeah.
Uh, so like any of the 6 tutors will do here, but sometimes the downside of a 65 card deck is you whiff on those a little bit more than you'd like. Spin Doctor is putting both wage workers back in. Ham's feeling like this is going to be an essential part of winning this, getting that extra click from taking repeated actions. Could be stuff as simple as like Reza Reaper function, spend 3 advancements to score either a fly on the wall or a tomorrow's headline. That gives the tag, and then end the line kill. That's probably what he's trying to set up for, and that makes things easier for this kind of kill line.
Yeah, Man Moon's in this like awkward spot. Parisha some turns hasn't been used, and he's trying to balance, finding the World Tree, and which is at that point his interaction lines become very profitable to him. 3 credits a turn, basically on each run. And right now, Hams is building a board state. None of these cards are known besides obviously the Res Regolith. And we saw in hand, I'm pretty sure off the Spin Doctor, we saw a copy of Hollow Man. I think we saw a Behold in HQ a couple turns ago. It might not actually look like it's still in there, so it might be on the table. And so again, while there's only one end of line, one Mindscaping the deck, there are multiple copies of Gaslight, which is that asset that if it's not trash, start a turn, you can go grab the one combo piece, the one operation that you need.
Yeah, so this board state feels like it's very much threatening lethal here, and Man of the Moon is really starting to run out of time to go and set up some protection against this kill combo. Looks like we
Muse.
do see the Muse in hand.
With
so
the overclock too,
yeah. Yeah, we might find the problem with Muse overclocking is that I guess it's like you Muse overclock, you get 1 World Tree, and then you get out a 2nd World Tree by targeting the Muse that's hosting the World Tree.
Yep. It's a bit expensive, but you can do it.
Yep,
Oh,
it
so
is.
yeah, Arson Amuse. Oh, not even. I think we're charging the Regolith, but I think now we're waiting for the Arasana trigger. Maybe we're just taking the Regolith down. I think it only had 6 credits on it. Still, that is good money. But of course, your
Yeah.
Arasana has the ability. We're going to install the Trojan from hand, or sorry, not a Trojan. So it will be removed at the end or trashed at the end of this
Yep.
run.
So Man of the Moon, I think, is describing this play of using the overclock credits and the Muse to go and search for a World Tree, trashing the Muse, so he's going to put one World Tree in the bin and one World Tree in play. Oh, getting SMC with the Muse. I guess that is cheaper, so
Yeah. And now you can
that makes
get
some
rid of
sense.
the resource, or you could go, and he's going for the Stone Chip Chart Room. Mind you, you could go for the program. Oh, no, there's no programs on the table besides Prisha. So we're going to go for the Stone Chip. And it's not so much that he needs the card draw right now. It just gives him a bit of resiliency that after you see a Reaper function, after you take a tag, you can always clicklessly draw 2, which will give you a lot more survivability. So that is one of the tech cards he wants on the table. Now, he's down to only 5 credits, but now every turn, as long as he can install something cheaply, get some value, he can push that forward. As simple as daily casts, as slow as telework is, sometimes you just want that money. And of course, we have the whole engine with programs with coalescence and then recurring them and bringing that stuff back and forward.
Yeah, the deck has a lot of, the whole deck is built to chain things one into another. We're going to see if turn, what is this, 5, I think, is too late for this to come online. But with some essential tech on the board, I think we're not in for, I think there was a real possibility the game was actually over if that stone chip did not come
Yep.
down. And so I think we're in an interesting spot now where we get to see what this NEH's plan is through the, not hard tech, not unbeatable tech, but through this pile of tech that Man of the Moon is going to be able to start summoning over the next couple of turns.
Yeah, speaking of the tech war, excuse me, Malia Zaloka can easily be on the table. That can blank a Stone Chip Chart Room. Now, of course, the one up in the list, you can't really tutor for it, but these are the threats that both players are aware with open deck lists. And speaking of open deck lists, I think Ham's deck list here is one of the corp lists, not too dissimilar to some PE lists, that does suffer a fair bit from open deck lists. When you exactly know what the possibilities of traps are and what sort of lines they're attacking you on tags, I think that's going to favor the runner, but with this many cards on the table, the runner is struggling to set up an equally intimidating board state.
Yeah, it is one of those situations where it's like the corp is on 17 credits, so they've got a lot of options. But it looks like Abraham's gonna install the telework, click it once. It looked like,
Yep.
and then make a run, turn that telework into a caldera.
Yeah,
Which
so the
can
Caldera
prevent the net damage off of Reaper functions.
and Mindscaping, right? So there's a bit of
Yes.
reach there. Mind you, Caldera is an old FFG card, 3 credits at any paid ability window. You can prevent core damage or net damage. And the net damage matters because we do have Reaper functions and we do have Mindscaping, which sometimes delivers that 1 extra net damage that's necessary. Obviously, that's incredibly expensive. We're installing it for free, paying 3 credits, 6 credits to dodge a full Reaper is a lot of money. But if it causes you to not lose the game, you'll pay those 3 credits.
Yeah. The other thing that Chad's pointing out, Caldera can't be blanked by Malia, so it actually becomes much more challenging. There needs to be a lot of meat damage to land the kill here. Looks like Hollow Man is being used, rezzed and moved. I think we're in for some shenanigans this turn. I wonder if it's actually just going to be giving the tag and then clearing out these resources for 2 clicks. Yeah. I think that makes the most sense here.
So again, this is 1 click to score a fly on the wall. That is a 3-1 that gives the runner a tag. So now the tag punishment here is unlikely to be lethal. I think Abraham might have a full cards in hand, a full suite. He's asking here whether you want to fire the stone chip before, you give the runner the option, or sorry, the corporation the option to pay 2 to trash it. So now there's a bit of a paid ability window here, but the Caldera might just leave. And again, Malia cannot take that on the shoulder.
I think this is a very difficult decision as the runner. I kind of would prefer that the corp spends 2 clicks going after my tech, I think, over just drawing 2 cards. But this is a deck that is super hungry for fuel to keep feeding. And so if the hand doesn't have anything, maybe just getting some more gas is the important bit.
Does it look like Abraham's on 5 cards in hand? It kind of looks like 4.
It does kind of look like 4. But
that's actually not
well. It doesn't matter. It doesn't actually matter here, I think,
because the second damage, we saw no Vera on the table. Mind you, if a Vera was rezzed here, it would make that dit card also do a unblockable type of damage that you can pick the best card from hand, and then you'd have to pop the stone chip immediately because an end of line will drop you from 3 cards on hand. So no fair on the table, which there's 2 in the list. Does give you a bit of information. But now we're hitting this, Cold War. Do you want to pop the stone chip, or am I going to pop it for you?
Yeah, and I think this is definitely something where both players probably need to think here. But I think I'm assuming that we'll get a decision on that pretty soon. Looks like no actions. Putting cards down on the table. Caldera gets trashed. 1 action remaining. Also going to trash the stone chip. I think this was the right line for Man in the Moon, and I think this is an interesting line for Hams. I like it quite a bit. A lot of the kill tech is resource based, so if you can tag, it works. So
now we probably have to consider clearing the tag at some point. It looks like there could be a Gaslight on the table if Hams here just wants to go for the clear out resources play and then go for the kill on the following turn. And also, of course, while money is a bit lower now, there's still a Res Hollow Man on the table. So next turn we could see the same play pattern again, as much as the money will be a bit tighter. I believe those 2 credits you see on the Regolith, those are not 2 credits, those are 6 credits. Those should be 2 charges if I'm not mistaken the way that we're representing Board State.
Yeah, so I think Man in the Moon, actually, I think, despite losing some tech here, can, I think, land in a pretty good spot because that was such an expensive turn. Yep. That was effectively the corpse spending 10 credits, right, to go and clear out everything there. So it looks like Ari's being used to install an Ika, and we're running... it's not quite clear to me where we're running, but maybe I think it's Archives.
Which this deck doesn't have any Archives traps that fires unless you steal a 1-point agenda, 2-point agenda, and suddenly, oops, you are oppoed. But again, the 3-pointers in this deck that Hams are running have additional costs to steal. They're Degree Mills, so you're never going to stumble upon Threat 3 without your consent of paying the additional cost. Now, that Ika was installed, mind you, that is a Trojan that doesn't require hosting, and we're just dropping a Conduit. That's incredibly aggressive.
Wow. Yeah, this is a very aggressive line, just saying, you can't...
There's 5 points in there?
There's 5 points, but you don't want to shuffle back that Degree Mill. Oh, apparently we're
trying to win with the Conduit this turn.
We're just trying to go all in this turn, which is an interesting line when tagged.
Now, the Orbital Superior, there are other 2-pointers in the deck. The Degree Mill is actually entirely safe unless you install another card and Arisan is fired. So there's functionally 6 more points you can interact with. Now, the 1-pointers can matter. There easily could be agendas on the table, but here, if we run the Conduit a couple times, we might see 3 cards, even more if we start trashing stuff. But
you know what? I wonder if 7 credits is not enough for the Corp to present a combo kill here, though.
It might not be. I think a Rashida might have already fired. Maybe there's one camping here, but we're 2 tags in, and I don't think we're clearing them here.
I mean, I wonder if you're supposed to just take 2 clicks off here, clear these tags, and say, what are you going to do? If you play Oppo, then next turn I will just hit Conduit 4 times, and see what we can make happen. But
now, cards in hand matters. If there's an Orbital on the table too, you can just take 4 meat damage next turn, right? You only need 6 credits for that. Not even. I think you need 5 credits to score that out.
You need 5 credits to score that out, and then click for a credit and then play end of the line. And I think you'd be credit perfect.
Yeah. So there are some lines here again. We're just clearing the tag, saying the Conduit's on the table. I know you don't have ice. I'm on game point. Yes, maybe one Oppo will connect. As long as Man in the Moon has enough cards in hand, it's hard to land a lethal here. We'll see if a Gaslight shows up to produce that one combo piece we're looking for. But there's a lot of cards on the table, and Man of the Moon knows none of them besides those that are rezzed.
Yeah, so I think this is on if Hams has the tools on board. I think they could exist. No Rashida, though, does make it much more challenging. I think Hams struggling to without that Rashida, it just makes things much more difficult.
I think there's a couple lines here, like Reaper Function, Regolith, Score Out, Orbitals. Oh no, the tags are gone now. Excuse me. Yeah, so now it's way harder. Yeah. Top deck there. We can only see a bit of Hams' hand here. Whether the Oppo comes in for 7 or even a small Oppo sometimes is correct. Just to keep.
Yeah, I wonder if Hams just didn't put points on the board and kind of ended up flooding up. And that might be why points are in the bin. Ended up in the bin. And with no reses here, I'm like struggling to figure out, are these like all traps? And by not drawing the world tree, Abraham just kind of outplayed the matchup here, but I don't know.
I think
It's an
these have to
interesting
be,
one.
right? Like two wage workers we saw trashed. Vera probably would have been
Yep.
rezzed by now. Maybe another Regolith, maybe more Reapers. The Caldera was targeted out. That's going to happen no matter what. But like, I think we saw Beholds in hand. I think we might have saw a Chekistron. Maybe there's another Spin Doctor here, and Hams didn't feel like we would
I
steal a
mean,
Degree Mill.
yeah, maybe he thought that there was no way the Degree Mill would get stolen on a 3 card board state when it's like
With a
World
World
Tree and
Tree,
Blue
yeah.
Shot. But you know, if so, he made the wrong call. We're gonna over install
Overinstall.
so as
That's
to
an
not
agenda.
draw with NEH.
Or do you think that's an
Uh,
agenda that he's saving now with a Spin Doctor?
yeah, it's hard to tell. That could be it. I think it looks like we're just gonna mark. Well, probably not with an advancement token. Probably just some other token.
Oh, one
Uh,
of the judges said something like, you can't do that.
Yeah, yeah. It can't be ambiguous whether or not that's an advancement counter or something else. But yeah,
But that overinstall is so fascinating, whether you want to get the card in the bin or, of course, if you want to just deny the NEH draw. I just don't see how you can play the whole game denying NEH draw for the rest of the game. Now, we have Cupulation as the 1 HQ multi-axis card in the deck, and it is a Spin Doctor. I think he might have overinstalled an agenda. Do you
yeah.
want to do
So
that?
I
Because
think
that'll go back in R&D at some point.
I know. I feel like the line ends up being for Man of the Moon something like run R&D, run archives, and then run R&D 2 more times and see a lot of new cards. Won't
Yes.
have a lot of credits to trash things. May need to like spend a click to install because there's the one Ika is down, so there's no Arasana triggers that will live on this board state. So might get fewer accesses than I initially listed, but
Yeah, you're
I
right.
feel
You
like
might have to run archives and install a card on the run, a program, and just let it see trash, get trash after you threaten the degree mill.
I mean, I think that's what you just spend a click to hard install the program, so it's live for the whole turn.
Yeah, that's true. That's
Um,
so you can swing R&D your guessing carry.
yeah, I wonder if Hams could have just left that card in the remote for the rest of the game.
I think
Like it's
so.
obviously very risky, and it's clearly a 2 or 3 pointer. Hard to know which.
It's
But
hard.
I feel like with this many face down cards and a conduit on the table, it's hard to imagine Man the Moon says, "Okay, now's my time to check every remote."
Yeah,
Maybe maybe with the like discard, he's worried that like, he's going to be like having discarded 5 points. He's worried that Man the Moon's going to read there as being more points out on the table than there are. But it is a little bit. It feels a little bit like overly safe in a game where you have to start taking gambles right away to make progress.
YDL for 3. We have the Regolith, and then last click we install to draw. So the ordering of that turn seems definitely interesting. There's the propeller from hand to respect the degree mill, and we're gonna go straight in for a trick shot.
Trick
So while
shot. Oh, that's so nice here. Ham
just spin doctoring.
it yeah, forces the 2 face, and so I think those must have both been agendas.
Now they're in the deck. Whether you want to play with them in archives and have another spin dart on the table, you can do that. But you understand that this is just going to allow Man of the Moon to see more and more cards. Let alone with this trick shot credits, you can trash. The deck has 27 assets. The only cards that are not trashable, there's a handful of operations, and then of course the agendas that basically win you the game. So we're going to see a lot of cards
Yeah,
here. Mind you, Conduit will still
there
get a
are
counter.
enough. Yeah, and there are enough 1 pointers that like a single agenda isn't the win here. There's 2 fly in the walls left, but I guess
Yeah.
everything else, every other agenda here is a hit and win. And there's going to be quite a few
Ooh,
cards. See,
there was a
oh,
Vera on the
Vera
table.
gets rezzed. Okay, it's just been sitting there chilling, unres. I think waiting for a combo turn.
Fundraiser,
And
2 credits. We're seeing deeper. That's a behold. You have to reveal that. Now that is going to be 4 credits for tags. Those 4 credits put you further away from trying to do a kill threat, but we can trash that. Now the top of R&D will show you 2 more cards. We also have 4 credits to swing your remote server. So if you want to go full tag me here, you can start touching more cards. That Vera is going to get cards out of hand, but that was there for the
I
fly
would
in the wall score.
I would probably kill the Hollow Man here because Oppo is already online, and so it's just
Yeah.
basically free to go kill the Hollow
Yep.
Man. That looks like exactly what's happening. I think the interesting question here is actually I was about to say the interesting question is do you clear the tags? But on 1 credit, I don't think you do. I think you run R&D a couple more times.
We're seeing here 2 cards
This
now.
looks like 3. That looks like a check a Scion and
Another
another
behold.
Behold.
Wait, that has to be revealed.
Yeah, that does have to be revealed, and I would
They
assume
probably did it through
trash.
voice. Yeah, I think he's thinking about revealing, firing it. It would put him down to 0 credits, mind you. Rashida could easily be on the table.
Yeah,
We have
yeah,
6 credits on a regolith. But the question is, how many tags? Again, the problem here is if there's a gaslight on the table, there you go. That's revealed. LB end of the line
yeah,
with mindscaping. That should do a fair bit of damage.
yeah, yeah. There would be the clicks for that. So, Man in the Moon. We'll see if he. I'm assuming he's going to get his conduit trigger here, and I think it's trying to decide between drawing up to just require like both Mindscaping and end of the line, or going for the win. And it looks like he's
Oh,
going to try and see 2 new cards off of R&D.
Hollow Man,
We're seeing a Hollow Man and a
Gaslight's
Gaslight.
seeing
That's some
one in the deck
interesting
is
info.
yeah, that's definitely some information. There's 2 Gaslight in the deck, and that is the ability to search your deck and start a turn for an operation. Now we're
All
floating two
right,
tags here.
floating 2 tags. Corp is scrambling. Does he have the punish? I think we're about to find out in what feels like probably the pivotal turn of this game.
Is a hand start a turn trigger here? Is he figuring out what to res? Because again, if you do the Gaslight, obviously he shuffles the deck. You're probably only pulling that to win the game. But if it's not clear here, again, this Corporation deck has 0 ice. So R&D is just going to be conduit threatened again and again and again until the game is over for one of these players.
Yeah.
Checking all the cards on the table. Mind you, we've seen the second Hollow in the deck. We saw the Wage Workers shuffled back. There might be one on the table. Money is a bit low. Now, the Econ Operations in this deck is only your digital life. There's no planograms, but of course, we have 6 credits on the Regolith. Looks like in the top left corner, we're considering End of Line, I think, might
Yep.
be in hand. Spin Doctor.
There's a Spin Doctor res.
So that was
Oh, that
Oppo
was
on
yeah,
the top
Oppo and
into
a
Hollowman.
Hollow Man. Yeah. So I think we might still be thinking about start of turn triggers to figure out. I think, we
Yeah.
want Hams want to decide. I think this clearly says Hams doesn't have the clear kill or is trying to just make sure that the math works out here. But we're seeing it looks like maybe 2 year digital lives being
Yeah, it looks
shuffled
like
back
it.
in. Which I feel like with the Regolith, it's actually not that more efficient. Okay, we're seeing a Hollow Man, and I can't quite tell if that second card was a your digital life
It
or not.
was. I think it was.
Okay.
Now the deck is relatively thin here, so we have the Regolith on the table. This means this was done, mind you, before mandatory draw. So whatever card that's going to be drawn here, it's an unknown card. Now we know the Oppo Research is in hand and a Hollow Man is in hand. Those were drawn off the Spin Doctor first. And you even have a bit more reach here with 4 credits, Mindscaping and a line. If I'm not mistaken, that's a 5 credit play.
And it's a 5 credit play, so it should be in the realm of possibility here. If one of these is Rashida that Hams has been sitting on for a long time, that is
It's
a
wild.
a 200 IQ play. Okay,
Oh,
we're
we're going for
resing
it.
a Reaper.
I think Reaper into End of
We're going
Line
for that line.
might be enough here.
Yeah.
Even Reaper into Mindscaping is 4 damage. Depends on the cards in hand. There's only 3.
It's like only 3, so that's got to be it at this point. Simulchip and a Bones go down.
Mandatory draw here.
Mandatory
Gaslight
draw.
not being rezzed. If we just have the Mindscaping, it does 2 damage. You just have to take 1 credit first. 1 card in hand, 6 on the table. Oh, we are playing a slide puzzle. I hate these. I'm not good at them.
All right, we're keeping it to 3. I feel like there's space for a 4th, but so it goes. So if there's no end of the line, that Reaper res
What?
looks a little bit. What was that? Just
It's tempo.
I like try and go for it. A tempo Reaper. Oh man, if Hams doesn't have it, that's devastating.
Checking the floor, drop the card.
Hoping for the top deck here.
I think I see another Reaper on the table. Now, Vera, mind you, doesn't do damage. So even if you have no cards in hand, it doesn't prevent you from stealing agendas. It's not an actual damage card. Not that it wouldn't fire. It wouldn't fire even if you won the game, but just fewer cards in hand means now more Reapers will fire. He did not have credits for 2 Reapers, notably. If there was a second Reaper on the table, he cannot produce credits off of like a Rashida and then use them to res the Reaper. But he's back up on 4 credits. Gaslights.
Oh man. Installing 2 new cards this turn. And just seeing this is I feel like this is just going to be a conduit race, but with 3 additional accesses this turn, I feel like the math has gotta be in Man of the Moon's favor here.
For 1, 3rd card down is Regolith, your digital life into Reaper. So we've seen the second Reaper there.
Well, there
That'll
are
be four
actually
X's.
3 in the deck, so
Yeah.
but there's only going to be 2 additional cards here.
1, 2. That's another
That
Gaslight.
does, and a federal there. It looks like.
Do you run HQ
Are
here?
we
He's
just going
drawn
to
so
keep
many
going?
cards. We're counting
I'm
the deck.
wondering if you run archives and HQ at some point here because you've whiffed so much that it feels like that's got to be in other places.
Man, the moon. Thinking where to run here again. That's a mitt of many cards. Now, purging here doesn't really change much. You can't take your whole turn off. There's no Bavires in this list because you just go back and rebuild this. So we have to hope there's enough on the
Looks
table.
like we're checking archives.
Big chop here. 2 face downs. Nothing.
Oppo and a Regolith, nothing.
Do you run HQ
Are we
here?
gonna
Do you check 1 on the table? One of those installables we know could easily be the Holloman, but there's not enough credits unless it's Holloman into Rashida, and even that, if there's a potentially an orbital on the table, that is lethal.
Yeah, it is. Well, there would have to be something else. Okay, we're just checking a random card. It looks like
Vera.
a second Vera.
Last
and that
click.
was click 4. We know there would have to be the third Reaper on the table. There it is.
Oh, we got it. Oh no, 1 card in hand. There was a Checkus on the table. More cards on the table. That's a Gaslight sneaking through. So no matter what, we're gonna deliver lethal there. But no agendas on the table. They're all in hand.
They're all in hand. I was wondering if it was supposed to be
Yes.
that you're supposed to check hand there. It looked like it was a 4 and 5 for Man in the Moon to win on hand there.
Yeah, single run on HQ. Again, that's a big thing with NEH. We didn't see much filter drawn. They have to be drawing cards anytime they build new servers. There was an orbital on table. Is that clear?
Yeah, I think there was 1 orbital on the table. It looks like maybe.
There's actually so few agendas left in R&D.
Yeah. I think like when you see that many cards in R&D, like you're seeing. I think Man in the Moon saw like 8 unique cards in R&D, and none of them were agendas. At that point, like this is a habit that I find very hard to break as well. But they've got to be in other places, and so HQ has got to be a place to check, especially with the discards. I'm a little bit. It does feel like that was maybe the place the last click could have gone.
Well played to both players, mind you. Man of the Moon, just an absolute stellar player. We had a fantastic performance this year over like Continentals. Also an organizer of online tournaments, been running the showdowns this year. I believe the early showdown in January, huge success, and there was one just a couple of weeks ago too. It just fantastic tournament organizer. So shout out to him. Definitely a favorite going to this event. Unfortunately, finding his second loss there in the lower brackets, which means Hams is going to continue on as our 1 NBN deck. I'm going to say relatively confidently in our top cut, playing on. Again, at the end of this round, I think we're going to have, I'm very bad at this, at least 4, maybe 5 players left in the top cut. I think only 4.
I think this round knocks out 2, so I think we'll be to the final 4. But after that, we'll be knocking out people one at a time. We've got a couple of exciting games happening off camera. I think Pailu and a Brick are also in a do or die match, and Salamir and Sokka are battling it out for top seed with Salamir on Thule and Sokka.
I think we have a result for that one.
Slot.
It looks like Salamir is
fantastic.
reported to take the win against Sokka. Sokka taking his first loss this entire weekend. It takes 3 rounds into the top cut, but Salamir with the Thule beating the Lat deck. Does that mean that Salamir is in winners finals or in the finals?
Salamir is in the finals for with a top 8. So I mean, I do like top 8s. They end up taking a way is like 3 hours less than a top 16. I think it actually is supposed to only be 2, but I feel like in practice it ends up being more. But yeah, now Man in the Moon had a great run this event. Could not quite pull it together against Hams. Hams gets to continue on to the next round, playing the winner of Pailu versus a Brick, and then the winner of that match of Hams versus the one I just mentioned will play Sokka for a chance to get into finals.
We're about to go to a brief lunch break. We'll be back in about 30 minutes, ideally, for the next part of the cut. We've also just got reports that the top 4 cut in American Nationals seems to be all Canadians. Top 4 Canadian cut. Let's go. West Coast players coming in across the border, like a 3-hour drive. I think they're glad they made it. And mind you, the scene in the West Coast of in-person play, just the trading back and forth across the border, there's such a vibrant scene of organized play there. I am definitely jealous of that scene. It seems phenomenal.
Yeah, for sure. I am. Hopefully, one day we can get the East Coast scene up to that level. I think we've got the players for it. It's just a matter of
we'll get it.
Hitting that level of organization that the Seattle Vancouver crew has had But yeah, thanks so much everyone for tuning in, and we'll see y'all in about 30 minutes. But these lunch breaks always have to be just a touch fussy, so we'll see. See y'all in
Enjoy the
about
music.
30.
We'll be back in a bit.
All right, hello everyone. We're back here for the lower semis. We have Hams once again piloting the NEH. This might as well be the NEH stream today. Up against Essa. So we do have a fun new matchup on the runner side. I should probably introduce myself. My name is Jeff, also known as Yuzendran. I am presenting this is the Cascadia top 8 cut, day 2. And also joining me for this game today is Andre. Want to say hello and introduce yourself to everyone?
Hey, how's it going? I'm Andre for the Metroball Grid. You can find me if you search those things up. I'm a content creator. I'm super stoked to be here with you today, Jeff. We're casting from far away, mind you, basically as far away in North America we can largely be from the location, but we've had a fantastic event. Again, 50 players showed up to Cascadia. We're down to just top 4. I want to say this as a Canadian, the top 4 is all Canadian so far. Just all the players from Vancouver who did the 2 to 3 hour travel down across the border, and they're putting on quite a show. We have 4 players left.
Yeah, and so Canadian gets to take down another nationals in North America. Very good showing for them this year. Here we have NEH and ESSA. What are your expectations of how ESSA changes the dynamic that we've seen in some of the other games that felt like they were very much about controlling the assets? Do you feel like ESSA is going to have a different approach to this game than the Latin Arsenal did?
It's going to be super strange, right? Like, so Begamut, Lamb, Banhar, none of those cards do anything. Now, you're still left with 32 events. You have Baya bans, but you have no inherent tech for trashing assets. Now, that being said, when you're interacting with a sort of like damage combos, the question is on ESSA, do you just install Marrow and play the whole game at 7 hand size and say it's going to be very, very difficult to flatline me? Or, of course, if you do that, besides Chistushka, you're letting out all your Sabotage. And Sabotage can be quite relevant, mind you. This deck has a lot of singletons, right? The singleton end of the line, the singleton copy of that Jinteki card that does 1 net damage that matters, Mindscaping, and having those hit the bin can be quite important.
Yeah, it definitely can. It's very true, but it looks like, given that this is a click 1 turn 1 Marrow for the runner here, I'm sort of suspecting that we're going to see more of that game plan of sit on 7 cards in hand, maybe even a steel skin or 2, and just see how much we can do as the runner to make it impossible for the Corp to win, and just try and win that way rather than through trying to actively disrupt the plans.
So keeping your econ up is important. We have, again, 32 events. A lot of them, this is not a bravado version, so all of them should be playable in this matchup. Now, whether you want to lose 1 more hand size for a Ghost Tongue on a later turn for some Sabotage, that can be helpful, mind you. Again, with 32 events, Ghost Tongue goes pretty far. We also have a bit of late game recursion. There's no DJ Fenris in this matchup, which you'd like an open HQ if you can get one. But we're looking at, again, 2 Finality. We're looking at 3 Chistushka, so there's a lot of pressure cards here, but even interacting with like Degree Mill is kind of difficult. There is functionally like not that many installables in the deck. Begamut and Lamb are incredibly expensive. Nuka and Banhar are your cheapest ones, and then your hardware, they all do core damage to you, which is obviously like a double-edged sword.
Yeah, so that's gonna make those degree mills very difficult. But it's like the degree mills are difficult for both players, and I do think over a long stretch of time, like the runner is probably more likely to be able to find a solution to them than not. So we'll be interested to see how this evolves.
That's a start. Rashida into federal fundraising. So filter draw generally will fire after the Rashida draws. So that's 3 cards and 3 credits. We've seen money being like a pretty big rate limiting factor. When it comes to this Corp deck, a lot of the lines that it wants to pressure out are expensive. Trying to score out with a Holobin is, as you know, probably quite expensive. We've also seen Oppa researches sometimes being a struggle, Behold costing 4 credits. There's not that many ways this deck can make money, barring Regulus, Your Digital Lives, Rashida. So most of that stuff is going to be table-based. There's the YDL. Count them out. It looks like maybe 4 credits. 6 credits?
Yeah,
what?
6.
Oh, Rashida.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because Rashida and Federal probably also drew. Yeah, just lots and lots of draw here.
That's a very strong financial start. 14 credits to 3. As again, I'm excited here. It's also nice to see Brick. It's worth shouting out Brick, top 16 Worlds finalist a couple years ago. If I'm not mistaken, he's kind of been off playing Flesh and Blood for the last couple of years. This is the first tournament I've seen him play in for a while, which obviously getting into the top 4 in this very, very competitive tournament. He's doing quite good for himself.
Yeah, I think he's dabbled on and off a little bit, from my understanding, but he's definitely back to putting up some very, very strong performances here.
Yeah.
You know, making it this deep into the cut of a 50-person event is no small feat. Um, I'm very curious. I did not realize when looking at until I opened his list just now. Yeah, there are only 8 installable, or I guess 8 non-hardware installables
Yeah.
in this entire deck. So it looks like we are going to see the Ghost Tongue come down as well. Pinhole Threading Hit, not a huge loss there. Sabotage Triggerable, I think I missed when bouncing between tabs. But, you know, this is 32 events, and I expect we're going to see a lot of them played here, just trying to apply some pressure.
Yeah, getting those events to be one cheap, remind you, it's like a prepaid voice pad, but it fires all the time. So it's very easy to get $1 return from that. Build your own Rozeki with a bit of disruption. But now we're on, if I'm not mistaken, 6 hand size. Generally, players have 1 die in front of them that tracks hand size, 1 die that tracks core damage. But as long as you're on 6 cards in hand, you have a fair bit of survivability through most of the common combos, as long as you keep the board state down. You're not letting like 3 Reaper functions fire in a single turn.
Yeah, it's, it does, these high hand size and these Anarch matchups in particular are a big part of why Mindscape, because of the deck, it allows the corp to chip 1 damage, sometimes a little bit more easily. But, unless multiple tags land, that Mindscaping is maybe has a little bit less utility in this matchup. It's like we're going to see a Dirty Laundry sent. Are we going into a random remote or into HQ? I'm very curious.
It's our first run of the game.
Going into HQ, I think that makes sense. Don't want to have this one get whiffed. And seize an orbital superiority out of hand. That is a great find.
Now that is a 2-pointer, so Opera Research will be online, but this deck has the Gree Mills as the 3-pointer, so that means until we collide with another agenda, we're definitely not going to be on threat 3 for a minute here, and that is definitely one of the win conditions that Hams wants to hold on to. So running HQ, we saw that in the last game. HQ does draw a lot of cards, just quickly through because of the way that NEH works with that additional card draw. Now, Federal Fundraising is going to give you a bit of filtering, but we're going back here to see what's been in hand. Behold! 4 credits are going to be paid for 2 tags here, NBN Snare. Now, if you can trash this turn, there's no real threat to it. You're already turned on Oppa Research, so you might as well throw that into the bin. But 2 tags left here. Healthy few, 5 cards in hand. We're going to get some more money from that Raindrops Cut Stone, but we'll see if we even have the time or interest in clearing 2 tags. The tag punishment in this deck, very notably, is not Market Voices, is not Self-Growth Program. Sometimes it's fun to Self-Growth Program a Marrow. It is simply death.
Yeah, it is interesting how narrow that ends up making the kind of outcomes and how polar it is, where sometimes you can fold the tag and it's totally fine because you ended up experiencing no pain from it. And then other times it's just the end of the game. And so it is quite challenging to see here.
Steelskin being played for free to draw 3.
Draw up. Okay. Want to avoid getting tagged. I'm assuming we're going to do this. Might, like, with 6 cards in hand, it is pretty difficult to get flatlined here, even on 2 tags. I can't actually tell. I think that looks like 2 tags.
It's 2 tags, yeah. I think it's 2 tags.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think one was cleared yet.
One of the big cards on the table you have to watch out for. Not only are there 3 copies of Reaper functions, but Gaslight. That is that start a turn, trigger, trash this, cost 0 to go search for an operation. And so on 2 tags, Mindscaping to end of line is 6 damage. It's spread over 2 instances, so that's why Brick here wants to be on 6 cards in hand to dodge that. But all it's going to take here is a single Reaper function. I think just building the board state there for Hams, Brick definitely has a turn here to consider clearing the tags.
Yeah, and with being on 8 credits, that seems like a pretty, straightforward potential here. Clear the tags, the deck has a lot of ways to bounce back in terms of money, so would not be surprised to just see sort of setup turn. And with 6 cards in hand, no tags, it does become difficult, even with 10 credits on the corp side to score out. It comes pretty close to credit perfect in a lot of cases.
Drawing up 7 cards in hand. We have a bunch of stuff on the table. Federal Fundraising has been taking away. Installing a Banhar. Now, this is not because it has valuable text, but because it's just a card you can shuffle away. Top of the deck there. Looks like maybe that was an Opera Research, a bit of a blue card. Hard to tell in this angle, but we're still maybe floating a tag here. Banhar on the table. If you want to trash it, you can. But we're going to be at a comfortable, I think, still 6 cards in hand.
Yeah, folding these tags here is very brave, especially with a Federal Fundraising taking NEH draws. It feels like this can go in a lot of ways, but it might be that this is actually the line just saying you have to line up combo pieces and you haven't yet, and I don't know, it's definitely something where I might think about clearing these tags, but tempo, like keeping the economy up, is tricky, and it might be that we've hit some of the harder to access econ or events in this style deck. If there's a bunch of Katorgas in hand or things, we see an attitude adjustment to draw 2 cards. We're going to reveal any agendas in archives or HQ. We
Ooh,
will see a
archives is a
degree mill.
big piece of text there. I always forget that's there. Now, it looks like some of the sabotage did get cards into the bin. There was game-winning points on HQ and on the table. There still might be a spin doctor, so that could always like shovel that away, but we're going to get some money recurring our agendas. There's 6 points back at R&D, and both players are very aware of that.
Yeah, it is interesting that those 6 points were not really actually accessible. Only 3 of those points were.
Yeah, that's true.
So, this is going to be a pain point for this ESA for sure. That there's just not that many cards. That, I would not be shocked to see a Nuka clicked, used once, and then just kind of let to sit there. I could also see a line potentially for the Corp where they just trash the Banhar. Yep. With an extra click they generate at some point, just to make the degree mill even more frustrating to interact with.
Hey, do you know you can install Boomerang and mark nothing? I'm pretty sure you can.
Oh, yeah, I think you probably can, can't you?
Yeah, it says when you install this, choose an ice. Okay. I fail, I guess. I'm pretty sure that works. Don't ask me about N6. Yeah. More cards on the table, mind you. On the turn that we found the Behold, we found the 2-pointer. That left Hams with only 1 card in hand. So we're getting a fair bit of filtering off the federal fundraising. Of course, sometimes this can be a bit tricky. We're going to labor rates, trashing the Baya Bands. I believe it's Chastushka and the one copy of Lamb. Now, Lamb only has value as a recursion piece, or sorry, as a degree mill piece. As an installable, you can shuffle back in. Now, Baya Bands, that is tag removal tech, the one of in the list, let alone asset destruction, card draw. And so we're just going to put in not the disruption cards, not the Chastushka, but just the financial cards, the kind of like fundamentals cards.
Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised to see the Chastushka not go in, but I get, I think where a brick is saying, like, this is going to be a game I have to win on those fundamentals, on credit differentials, and that's the thing he feels like is holding him back from interacting here. So we'll see how this pays out. Labor Rights gets one card out of the deck. If that hit a Steel Skin or a Strike Fund, I also suspect that was part of what the effort was there.
Now, this list is on 3 labor rates. It doesn't have DJ Steve. It doesn't have the Ashen Epilogue. So there is still going to be a fair bit of recursion the way Anarchs can do, but it's not going to be endless buffet. So at some point, Brick will run out of resources. I'm pretty sure we'll come to a conclusion of the game in either way before that comes up, but there's technically a clock on the runner side here. Looking at the hand, Dirty Laundry, mind you, all these cards are so much better when you pay 1 credit fewer, but we don't have Miss Bones. We don't have Scrubber. We have no ways of favorably dealing with the assets in terms of financials besides just getting credits.
Yeah, it is pretty tricky here. That's probably why the Laundry went back on the deck, is just to have a way to reliably get cash on this board state.
Finality.
See a finality. That's very, very spicy. Gonna do some sabotage here. It looks like a brick is saying, my line here is just to smash accesses in early. I don't feel like going late, and that's probably why these tags are being floated.
As you mentioned, though, there's only 1 copy. We've seen 2 copies go back of the Degree Mill. We only steal 1 of them. Wage Workers on the top there, deciding whether to trash that. I think now after the Steel Skin got hit off the core damage, we're at 9 credits down to 5. Second up, it's a Rashida for 1 more credit. We're just trashing cards off the top of the deck. Sabotage 2, that's a fly on the wall. We're now at threat 3, and we have the money. 4th card in. Can't tell exactly what that was, but that's going to stay there. So we saw Sabotage, mind you. We're now at 5 hand size, and 5 hand size is on the cusp of being lethal if you set up the combo. Oppo for 7 is probably affordable if Hams has 1 econ card somewhere on the table, but the top of R&D is going to break lock with federal fundraising if Hams needs to find a different card there.
Yeah, that does, give a brick some opportunities to think about lines and say, okay, if he didn't have me dead on board, maybe I'm not still dead, but I do think the possibility of a Gaslight to break the lock seems like a real potential danger. I wonder if we're going to see an Archives check to see if, through a miracle, another 4 points were sabotaged into Archives off of that finality. Stranger things have happened. I can
Yeah.
see running HQ here. A lot has been drawn, nothing has been scored, and it definitely is a place that agendas end up. So, be interested to see.
We're going Katurga Breakout. Looks like we are running archives here. Now, that is recursion card. We're bringing back another finality, the same finality there. So Hans is going to get lower. We see the bin there. What's important? Check a Scion. An Oppo's thrown out. I think there's one Behold in there as well. So that should be two Behold in there. And recursion is obviously so important against ESA, against sabotage. But if there's a spin doctor on the table, I'm pretty sure Hams won't use it proactively, but actually will hide it and only use it in response to our check on archives, in which that there's points in there. So sometimes it's hard going for a Chistushka if you haven't checked these 7 other cards, because most of the damage that it can be done, at least when it comes to terms of stealing points, can be instantly undone.
Yeah, this is going to be very challenging. I don't know, board state. It's an interesting board state for both players. I think I would definitely rather be the NEH on this board. It feels like you're probably one card away from having a setup here. And so it is really on the runner to push forward enough tempo. We're going to see a running hot played. This is going to keep this turn going.
Just tempo, mind you. Essa, very importantly, wants to turn. Losing a Dirty Laundry, definitely a card, I imagine, one of the better options in the hand here. But now we've gained 2 additional clicks. The core damage was delivered, so we're down to lower hand size now. A single copy of, even with the 2 floating tags, a single copy of Orbital Security.
I wonder if we're playing Finality again this turn.
We might be.
Yeah, that would be a very interesting line. I feel like I want to see an H. We're just sending it on R&D. Wolf 2 just going at it here.
Losing to Baya, another click compressed card draw option if you want it. We're down to 1 card in hand. There are so many things that end the game here. That's the Oppo off the top.
Oppo,
Reaper.
That's a Reaper. Probably going to stay. Another
Checkist.
Scion.
Thinking 4th card in. It's your digital like nothing.
Wow.
Now with 1 card in hand, I think at least 2 more clicks, maybe 1 more click here. It is hard. Your hand size is so low, taking so much core damage, double dipping into that ESA value, not firing that once per turn sabotage. But the top of R&D is clear.
So at this point, I feel like you're all in. You might as well run HQ and see what you can do. I feel like. I guess checking the board is a possibility, but only 2 cards in hand. It's like we're checking HQ.
No!
See, there's an end of the line. I think
the
there's
worst
probably
card to see. That's a fist bump.
And just gonna tap it out. All right.
Yo, sending it down the paint.
Taking names. A Brick taking a very aggressive line, and I think just getting punished for it. Hand was mindscaping end to end the line with a Reaper on the board. I think this one was. It's funny. I think if a Brick had just spent the turn clearing tags, I'm not sure there was actually it looks like there was not an answer on the board. So
that is so tricky, mind you, drawing into the 2 kill punishment cards and the Reaper function. It's so hard to get out of there. And of course, Ham's just sending it down the paint, the road with the most wolves on it of the 2 paths, and unfortunately just not connecting. Still pretty tricky, but when you know 6 points are guaranteed in R&D, I see the line for sure. Well played to both players.
Yeah, for sure. This was an interesting one for sure, and I think we'll probably have the next match pretty soon.
Yeah. So how the bracket works?
Oh yeah.
Sorry. So that is Brick's last game. We're going to be moving on now to the lower finals. It's going to be a rematch. This was actually round 1 we saw on stream, as much as technical difficulties did interrupt the end of it. And I'm not sure what side we'll be seeing. I'm assuming we probably will see the opposite side, but that'll be a rematch between Hams and Sokka.
Yeah.
They faced off in round 1, and it was pretty one-sided, but that was Hams on NEH, and we might see the flip.
Yeah. I'm expecting, given that Hams has corped 3 times in he will probably be running, and that is what it looks like we're going to see. We will be back in about 5 minutes with Sokka's Ag Infusion versus Ham's Essa. Stay in your seats. We will be back very soon. All right. Well, that was a fast 5 minutes. As I'm sure y'all are aware, the clocks speed up every now and again. We have Sokka playing his beloved Ag Infusion, and we get to see another Essa into this Ag Infusion. Let's hope this game goes a little bit further than the last time we saw this on Essa into the Sokka's Ag Infusion, where it just kind of ended abruptly with a Banhar into an Anansi. Hopefully that won't happen here, but I think remains to be seen. Both these players having very good seasons here, but Sokka, are pretty close to having an undeniable case for being is undeniably, I think, the best netrunner player this season. I think racking up a case to be maybe the best netrunner player of all time. But we're going to see if Hams can interrupt that flow here and use the power of sabotage to make things happen.
Like, I don't know the stats. Sokka so far over 2 days has lost one match, which was against Solomir. He died on turn 2. This happened off camera. He had one turn to play, and I think hit a falsely disputed tracing end of line. Oops, game is over. But like, I would not want to sit in Ham's situation here in Ham's seat, but I think the Asa matchup is relatively interesting, mind you. This is a deck of 8 barriers. Some are very, very taxing barriers. We're looking at 3 bronze. Mind you, we're not on Botu. I love me some Botu, but if you get that Begamut up sooner than later, you're breaking a lot of the ice in the deck for 1 credit. The question is, how easily can you deal with Nancies and Saisentan?
Yeah, I do also think actually it's worth shouting out the rhyme here as a
Yeah.
low-key, very solid include into Essa until Essa has taken 5 core damage. Oh, send a message off the top on a dirty laundry. Sokka saying, why? We're going to see a red. It's going to be a Saisentan on HQ.
One of in the list, mind you, Sokka's list on 3 Nisei Mark IIs on Off-World Office, all the bacterial programmings you can fit in there, and then the single send a message. So I think actually there you'd rather have the early bacterial programming. You're not too upset about an early Saisentan. It does also turn on the Ag Infusion ability, which is kind of interesting. Nuka's going to respond to the other side, but now less work here to do, of course, and getting your dirty laundry credits on the way in.
Yeah, I would not be surprised to see. Oh, it looks like a sure gamble from hand. I wonder. We saw a Botulus in hand. I would not be shocked to see that Botulus just put on the Saisentan at some point to keep the corp in check. Make that HQ more accessible. That can be a big part of these matchups. The Ag Infusion wants to score 1 agenda, usually does so pretty slowly, and controlling HQ and having access for the Chishdushkas in particular can be very, very valuable. And that's the interesting thing by Sokka choosing to res the Saisentan on HQ. The Chishdushkas are, even though not immediately, are in theory online, and the normal Ag Infusion counterplay does not yet exist, and you just force Sokka to spend some time and credits to get himself defended against those.
Speaking of Ag Infusion counterplay, just so we're on the same page here, this is an older FFG identity. It's a 45-17 influence. And it says once per turn when the runner encounters an unres piece of ice, you're able to trash it, approaches an unres piece of ice. You're able to trash it to send the runner into another server and they encounter the outermost. While Pinhole is going to take a Rashida down there, that means that as long as you have res dice on the outermost, you can send them into that and they cannot jack out. The ice has to be res, but that is going to have a huge impact on the game here, because if you want to run R&D to see a run, you can be forced into the Saisentan. And hey, there's that respect you saw from the Botulus coming down on the table. I do think we have probably some Mavirus in the list. Actually, no Mavirus. That is going to be just a little Botulus.
A lot of these. It's funny to me how, like, I feel like HB is playing Mavirus. A lot of the some NBN combo decks will play Mavirus, but we're seeing almost no Mavirus in Jinteki, which I think is quite interesting. How they feel like they're positioned okay against the viruses otherwise, in a way that other corps maybe are not. It does have a better game against Amakua, but okay, I think we're back to Sokka now, trying to decide. We do see a Nisei Mark II in hand. I think it's difficult to figure out. Sokka's trying to make the evaluation. With only 7 credits, can he push here against the Lamb? I think it's a very challenging board state for both players. Runner is only on 3 credits, which definitely gives Sokka some extra room to breathe, though.
Yeah, that lamb grabbing onto Asmon's face is a very powerful breaker. This is one of the latest unbanned cards that used to be on the ban list and allows you to break not only barriers relatively cheaply, Brawn for 5 as a start, but allows you to paint and break your way through just about anything. Once per turn, it can make an ice into a barrier, and it breaks barriers really well. Bravado, we're going to take one subroutine from the Saisantan. We're assuming event was called. Hitting a botchless is actually pretty meaningful there, and there's going to be an Axis plus 7 credits. Essa has not sabotaged once. We've taken no core damage. We found no marrow, no ghost tongue. There's only 2 ghost tongues in the list. And finding a border control, that is a barrier, of course, but cool enough. Interacts, and I guess Ag Infusion interacts really favorably. How do you light the fire in this matchup?
I think you just basically don't, or you wait, or you have to try and bait a run and then tank it after the fact, which is just not the situation you really want to be. Looks like we are seeing a Marrow hit the table and a running hot taking all the core damage off of Essa. Looks like we are still thinking, Sokka is thinking about the sabotage here.
Now, sabotage, this is 2, so Sokka has to decide where to trash 2 cards from, either from HQ or the top of the deck. As soon as he goes from the top of the deck, though, he can't decide to go back to HQ, so decisions have to happen first. It looks like he's considering there's a Rhyme in hand, a Brawn in hand, and Brawn does definitely have a shelf life against this rig, so sometimes not your most favorable way to tax out on the remote. We also saw the border control, so mostly barriers that we've seen, of course, besides the Res Isenton, but definitely a big decision here. If you're down 3 points, I think it's a bit harder to just go off the top of the deck. One off the top. Yeah. Looks like it might have been a Charlotte.
I think it was a Tatubola, maybe.
Oh, that does make sense.
Off the top of the deck.
Speaking of Charlotte,
it looks like we're seeing a Charlotte and the Lacosta. So net up 1 credit and draw a card this turn, and then next turn get 4 credits and an extra card if this is left undefended and unadvanced. And I think we know that Sokka does have a Nisei Mark II in hand. But I think his goal here is to slow cook this for a bit. He does not have that much money. And so it's, up to him to figure. I expect we're going to see some ice placement here. As Peter was talking about yesterday on the cast, a lot of how Sokka thinks about the game and what he spends his time thinking of as the corp is where he's going to want his ice, not just this turn, but where he's going to want it in 5 turns and in 10 turns.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot of evaluation being done there. That looked like a border control going on HQ, which is a very nice tool to have in the matchup.
Ice also on archives, mind you. While we can see dirty laundries for some amount of value, the big thing here you want to play around is pinhole threading. And with the thread, the Ag Infusion ability, pinhole threading is functionally a useless card because it's a force trigger and it forces you to access a different server. So if you ever pinhole somebody into the remote server, there's nothing else they're really trashing with it. It's a very interesting interaction that most players are jockeying around as much as there's only 1 more pinhole left in the runner's list before we start hitting the 1 of labor rates as our only recursion.
Now, it's the big thing for the runner is that they have to try and figure out how to bait Ag Infusion Boop. So we're seeing a Rhyme. I think the question here, it looks like we decided
that thimble rig is so good because you can't break it with Lamb twice. It's the best thing to res into like a raindrops where it's going to be a hard end the run and only gives 1 counter. Is pretty rare for Jinteki modernly. We're going to get 1 card through. Hitting. Third running hot.
Ham's only solution to this is the 1 remaining Botulus in his list. He has no decoder in the list. So a single Thimble Rig actually keeps this remote. Wait, is Lamb for the rest of the run or just the encounter?
I think
I need to double check.
For the encounter.
Wow, it is the encounter. Yeah, so amusingly, that Thimble Rig is enough for Sokka to score out here until the final Botulus comes down.
Yeah, that's wild. Again, the way that happens, Thimble Rig, is once the runner passes it, you can move it, which means you can make the server Thimble Rig into Thimble Rig, which requires a more permanent solution than, than the Lamb. I've seen versions of this deck in Essa also playing a Singleton Buzzsaw for this sort of problem because, maybe a Banhar can come down and that can be a bit awkward. You can do Banhar into Lamb, but it's definitely be a struggle, especially for something res for 2 credits.
Yeah, since Sokka's probably not going to sit back on just that Thimble Rig. I expect we're going to see a 3rd, maybe even a 4th ice come down on this remote. But for now, that is a wide open window, and Sokka is cooking here. Would not be shocked though if we see just even more ice built up, maybe some ice built up and some credits. But Sokka, I think, taking the draw here, still has lots of economy left in the deck. In particular, obviously, some hedge funds, and now evaluating what he wants to do with the ice he's drawn so far.
Charlotte is just such an immense engine. If you can't trash that, if you can't bring down the Lacosta, let alone Charlotte herself, that is just a free 3 credits and a card draw every single turn. You've seen Daily Quest. What about Daily Quest and more fuel to continue to protect your Charlotte, to put yourself deeper? And then as soon as you're ready to go, you put a 4-2 on there, and Nisei Mark II is your first agenda, and they get scored out, never advance. You can even single advance it to get another install the following turn to make sure you're not losing Lacosta value. We're going to install Hedge Fund. We have that Botulist HQ 3 cards in hand. This is the hard thing, is like when there's a Charlotte server, how long does does the corporation get that Charlotte value, even if they have an agenda in hand? Like sometimes you want to hold and let Charlotte build more of your board state, stabilize your economy. If you have a 4-2 in hand, does it go straight in their remote server, or does it stay there amongst 2 other cards?
Yeah, that is a very tricky call here. I think Sokka is, you know, playing very controlled here. I think, if Hams wants to try and stay, like, needs to kind of recognize what Sokka's plan is here and figure out how he feels like attacking it. One option is actually, I think, to try and force some ice reses on things like R&D, just to keep Sokka from making the push. While Essa slowly builds up forward, we're seeing a legwork here. I think this is click one. This is a very interesting call.
Oh, there's an Nisei and an
Because
Anoetic in hand.
yeah, so Sokka needs to decide if he uses the Ag Infusion ability, which we're gonna call accidentally, Boop. Or I will call accidentally, is booping. How is what is he gonna do? And because this is click one, what other threats does he have to worry about? Looks like we're gonna res a border control here. I actually like this over the Ag Infusion boop, because even though it can be broken, the counter of the Siphon get used, and now the border control can be popped after Sokka deals some damage and hope maybe gets 2 for 1 here.
Now this is super telling.
Yeah.
If you pop the border control here, there's obviously something in hand. It's hard to go back, but that's going to be swiped from hand for sure. Now we did hit events, so we get another damage. That is the call on Saisantan, so losing as well. A Marrow, that's a totally fine loss here. Border control is being popped. You know there's an agenda in hand, maybe even 2.
Yeah.
The question is whether you can afford to go back and just full send it. You still have the ability to break this, if I'm not mistaken, for 4 credits with the Lamb if you want to go for the maybe 1 and 3.
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility. It feels a bit far-fetched to me, because but maybe with the border control pop, you say, okay, there's definitely things of value in there. I think it's just very difficult to know if that is your most profitable approach here, because it's going to leave you on 1 credit, and if you miss, you're going to be such a rough spot as the runner. So I would not be surprised if Hams says, okay, well, I didn't get to use the Ag Infusion ability. I did get to drain Sokka for 4 credits at the cost of only 2 of my own, and he more or less drew cards off of it. So I think he can keep playing a tempo game with an understanding of where the agendas are now, and figure out what his plan is to get into HQ from there. 1 labor rights in the bin as well, I think, and
that's the only labor rights, if that's in the bin.
Oh, that is. I thought we saw that got damaged earlier in the match. That would be a toughie. But there's some Katorgas to do some recursion. Maybe we'll see some Katorga for legwork action. There's 5 credits going down into a Begamot, getting some sabotage going. I expect both of these are going to come off of R&D.
Yeah, the huge cat now, mind you, hitting the Steelskin Scarring. So the big combo here is that you can paint with Lamb and break with Begamot. In terms of core damage, I think we're on 2, maybe 3. Begamot does take 1 core damage when it comes in with its drink. So that breaks eventually, again, Bronze, Botus, which are not on this list, bless Botu. You break those for 1 credit.
Yeah, I feel like this has to be 2 core. Oh, maybe
3.
We are on 3?
Yeah, I think it was Running Hot, Marrow, Begamot.
Was there a Running Hot? I must have missed the Running Hot play then.
Yeah, maybe I did too. But it seems like it's 3, right? Credit. Looks like HQ's safe here. And also, one of the big things with Charlotte is it's refilling the hand. One of the big pressures is you get with Essa is that you wean down the hand of the valuable cards, and then you can go for that legwork. But Charlotte giving you a card a turn is basically giving you some sabotage safety.
Yeah, it's interesting here how much We know at one point, or I believe I saw a Rashida drawn by Sokka at one point, and leaving the Charlotte in there was absolutely the correct decision. And it's interesting this Ag Infusion actually I think prefers slightly the um, the Charlotte to the Rashida in these board states because it just generates so much value with while still allowing Sokka to have a lot of opportunities to mitigate flood and make decisions at a slow pace that he can control, allowing him to really leverage some advantage while the runner kind of runs in place into this difficult set of ice that's being presented.
You mentioned slow pace, and that's actually like a fascinating thing when it comes to the structure of this deck. Sokka is well known, mind you, winning worlds last year on the sort of Bio Vault Glacier BTL, and Glacier full Glacier Ag Infusion was totally playable, more so a couple months ago. And I think as a response in the last couple weeks to things like World Tree Ari, Fizarium Tangler, stuff like that, we've actually moved to a slightly faster Ag Infusion, right? Like obviously still things are going slow, and this is how it should be played in this matchup, but we're no longer on Bio Vault. We're only on 2 copies of Anoetic Void. So this is meant to be a bit faster of an Ag Infusion, which is interesting because I think we're just turning the corner between, again, we have the 4-2 in hand, but we're going for the Charlotte. It's just a matter of maybe one more turn.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting outcome. We've seen, like, I'm going to give a shout out to Not Again. He's a local metamate and put up some very nice results with a, like, triple seamless version of Ag Infusion that would really was, like, excuse me, trying to play at, like, a PD level of tempo
Yep.
almost. But Sokka going for the much more like game control style of 2x border controls, just having a lot of control over the course of the game of the play and where runs can and cannot be successful. And I think Sokka has a lot of confidence in his ability to read what the runner's ranges and threats are, and then be able to place ice and handle threats from that.
The ice placement is so important. Begema Lamb is definitely very, very frightening. You're breaking Anansi's for 3 credits. However, it's only once per turn. Advancing Charlotte, that's a click for 2 credit button. It looks like we're going to weave in the next card, whether it's install or install advance, so we can use Lacosta 2 turns in a row. Just install Hedge Fund. Looks like we're going to push for the Nisei Mark II. With the Nisei Mark II, with the Ag Infusion ability, it's probably quite hard to get good value from the once per turn ability on Lamb if you ever have to make one important run. We're looking at things like Finality. Because this deck doesn't have Stargate, it doesn't have Twinning. It needs to actually land the 2 finalities or just install enough sabotage cards.
Yeah, this honestly, if this Nissan Mark II gets scored,
Ooh.
it feels a little bit like checkmate. But Hams, I think,
Great
recognizing
Chestushka.
he has to make a window, and this Chestushka is brilliantly timed when the play is made before things get built up too much. The finality definitely stings there.
Into the
And the
Katorga.
Katorga. Oh,
That
those
was
are
just
some
2
tough hits.
counters. Again, not having the money to paint and break with Lamb to Begamot, so we're going to fire one of the subroutines, which basically cascades onto itself. Not only losing the recursion, this Chastushka, again, if there was a single unresed ice on HQ, Ag Infusion could say, you're just Chastushkaing archives, it won't do anything. But here we have a good window. And if we look at the hand here, we have Sprint, we have an extra copy of the Lacosta Grid. Sprint, mind you, does not take cards from archives back into the deck. It's only from hand, and can't tell what the other
Yeah.
card is in there.
I almost wonder if Sokka's going to think about sabotaging 4. It looks like sabotage 2. Oh no, I guess it was 3 from hand and then
Yep.
1 from the top of R&D. I think that makes a lot of sense. His hand is like we know it's light in agendas. It makes a lot of sense for it to be light in agendas, and this gives him a lot of control over how many points could possibly end up in archives while not sacrificing his own tempo completely. I think Sokka could go for the score here, but I think is saying this remote is still completely safe. So let's just keep locking things down. Why take any risks when we can just close the runner out of this game completely?
A nice on HQ, yeah, that's where we're going to see that. Makes Chestushka impossible unless you have 2 Chestushkas in a row. Hansei review, card on the table. That card on the table looks like a Spin Doctor. It might not be. There's not too many other things you want to put on the table, whether you think it's a Rashida, so maybe we can challenge it, but definitely reading like a spin. I think, or no, he just put his hand down. That's not a server, right?
I cannot tell, honestly. I think
he put
it
his
might have
hand
been.
down. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's just his hand on the table. I don't think he'd put a Spin Doctor out like that. Mind you, Botulus missing a counter
Yeah, that's
here.
true. Oh no,
Oh,
it does look like it was installed.
Might be a Spindo. I think we're checking. It is a Spin
There's
Doctor. Okay, so now he's drawing to two
yeah.
cards here. This is an unfiltered draw. I think one of them might be a Nisei. Now you can't run HQ here. We did get the Botchos counter. The Botchos might fire, but you can force a res. But Sokka's got good money. We're at 24 credits if I'm reading that correctly. So maybe you can get an access, but with 1 credit, yeah, no, you're just too short here. No Ghost Tongues. There's only 2 in the list. Strike Fund in hand. Throwing out a Banhar there. We did see also the Light Fire hit the bin. I think here we're going to see Advance Jam the next 4 too. And that is going to put
that
us Nisei
seems
into
right.
Nisei. You're going to be on track to close the game out again. Step 1, build and fortify. Step 2, chain. And we're currently halfway through step 2.
Yeah, step 2 is looking real fierce here. That Nisei Mark II counter really feels like it more or less shuts the door on all of these high activity, high impact run events that the runner is like building their game plan around. And so it feels like the runner has to, rely on running hots really to make some difference here.
There's only one more, if at all.
And there's
also
lost
a bunch of them.
Yeah, and there's not that many credits on board either. This feels like Sokka is in a commanding position, and we'll probably get this Nisei Mark II scored, and then just be kind of in a when will he draw the 5-3 waiting room. But I think Hams is saying I need to get on credit totals, so playing a strike fund into a sure gamble, and then into a Dr. Nuka and drawing, or I guess no, the Dr. Nuka might not be this turn. That'll probably be next turn to try and give Ham some gas to get back into this. Sokka, once again, after the mandatory draw, considering does he need to shore up any defenses, or is now the time to score?
I don't know if he needs to. Again, we know how hard it is for that Thimble Rig. It's actually impossible to break that Thimble Rig. The best you can do is put a Botchus on it, and then you're only breaking it twice. You cannot break it 3 times, let alone you can then interact with Ag Infusion on the 3rd ice. So this server, he doesn't have to do anything. Now, he can advance it and push it. He obviously wants to be only scoring 3 agendas, so 4-2 into 4-2 into 5-3, which means the 5-3 he wants to do install advance, so he might get that ready next turn to have those extra clicks if he top decks it. We'll see again. Triple advance, just click for credit. That's what he's doing. He says it's so safe. I can yell where the agenda is, and I know you can't get there. And next turn, I can draw, install advance, see 2 more cards before pushing my 5-3 if I don't have it.
Yeah, that's a really interesting line of saying I'm going to need to. Generally, if this was a brand new player taking that kind of action, I would go, "What are you doing? Like you're potentially giving up so much tempo if the runner does get in." But it is in this situation that remote is so tight that spending those clicks and then saving it so that Sokka does not have the 5-3 in hand is what this line is kind of broadcasting. Even if we couldn't see that is what this play is saying. And so by scoring in this fashion, he's set up so that he can click to draw. He does get those 2 shots at finding a 5-3 here. Looks like we're going to do a Raindrops Cut Stone on the remote to see what's been sabotaged. Looks like a whole lot of nothing. Some high value cards here for sure. An Analytic Void, a Border Control, and a Sprint all in the bin from what I could see. But it's, no points. Sokka is not particularly concerned, does not feel like he needs to even invest in resing that ice. So,
and no res there, mind you. We can run HQ, but I do think it shows here he probably doesn't have an agenda in hand. Otherwise, he could have pushed it into the safety of the remote server. I do think off the Dr. Nuka, Hams here is holding at least 1 Chastushka. We've seen 1 hit the bin already. I might not be tracking enough to know where the 3rd is, but you need to go for a double Chastushka play, and that's already so difficult. At least with the first Chastushka, the ice will be removed with the Ag Infusion, so the second Chastushka will connect when it comes to the Botulus. But that's the best you're doing is Sabotage 4, and he can technically give the whole hand. He can give 3 cards in hand and say, I don't care. I don't need these cards. I have a Thimble Rig.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of impressive how much the single Thimble Rig is doing against this particular runner setup. It's like if Hans had included a single turbine, or not turbine, buzzsaw, I feel like this matchup ends up playing extremely differently. But this is, I think, one of the cool parts about open deck lists is it allows players to make calculated changes to their board state. and play patterns to kind of exploit the weaknesses in their opponent's decks or tendencies. And so it looked like we might have seen a stab at HQ. Sokka, I
No,
think, is trying to
love this. So Sokka, you might not be able to see this on stream, but Sokka cares so much about the body language his opponent gives off and he gives off. On the run of HQ, he is hemming and hawing. He's thinking about it. Now, this is more so, of course, whether he reses the ice, then Chestush can connect, stuff like that. But the cards in hand don't matter. But he's going to put on a show for his opponent to make this seem like it's a difficult decision. He's counting the cards in R&D. He's making all these, reads in which sometimes this is not a hard decision, but he's not going to make it obvious it's not a hard decision.
Yeah, it's interesting because like this is, I think we're both reading this as more or less just trying to give his opponent some odd signals.
Yeah.
The thing to me is I feel like the way he played his remote is just the actual signal that matters here.
Oh, yeah, but why not both?
Yeah, I mean, if you have the option to confuse your opponent and it doesn't cost you anything, you should absolutely do that.
Oh, whoa! Wait,
whoa,
wait a second.
Okay, we got this completely wrong. That's wild. Oh man, we've been bamboozled here by Sokka's line.
Could he not have jammed that last turn?
He couldn't have because the Nisei Mark II would have had only a single counter. I think that bacteria must have been what he mandatorily drew and decided that he was going to go for the line of just, I get to install advance it in the following turn.
Yeah, you're right. It was a 1 and 3 there, and he did double advance. Now, draw puts it a 1 and 4 probably, but bacteria programming, let me try that again. Bacteria programming is firing now, which lets him look at the top. I want to say, what's the most ridiculous number we could put on this card? Is it 9 or is it 7?
The card itself says 7.
7. Okay, it's reasonable now. But we look at 7, and the Corp can do whatever they want with these cards. Trash them, put them back on top of the deck in any order, put them in HQ. And this means that it's so hard to close the game off after bacterial programming is fired. Not only do you know the top of R&D, so you know when to res, when to sabotage, but you also now have the cards in hand you need to close the game out. I don't know if an Anoetic Void is going to come into play, but now that's additional cards for fuel for that. It's so hard for a Bacterial to fire when you steal it and then feel like you have any way to tempo out the rest of the turn.
It's interesting here. I feel like if Sokka has a 5/3, he can put that one card down on R&D if he wants to be very, very safe. And then he'll still have to click to draw, install on advance, and plays to make there. Though the pinhole could present some scary possibilities there. If he doesn't see a 5/3, I think this bacterial trigger becomes a lot more interesting. I almost actually wonder if, given this board state, if Sokka could have actually spent the Nisei Mark II counter after the Botchless got used. Yeah. Because between that and an Ag Infusion boop, there would not be many clicks left for the run on HQ, and it would be taking a lot of damage off of Seisentown to just have this chance.
No, you're totally right. That counter there could definitely be used. It's hard to see it mattering on the remote server, but those 7 cards were just put back. Whether, again, that's 2 cards down or whether it's 1 card down, we're just discarding here at the end of the turn. That was last click. So Bacterial, if we have a 5/3 now in our hand, it can go into the remote server. We're going to score that Nisei Mark II. Could be an off-world office. We're assuming it's a Nisei Mark II. That's the more common option here. And we can just jam the next agenda.
Oh, it looks like this actually is a Bacterial.
Oh, okay. So now the Nisei's going in.
Yeah,
that makes so much more sense.
I misread a Nisei in the hand, but yeah, this play makes a lot more sense that's the Bacterial in the remote. Sokka's just going to arrange the top 7 so he cannot lose, I expect. And,
it's so hard to close the game out when you know your last turn is, again, not only 1 bacterial program fired, but 2. I know they had a huge overlap, and that doesn't really matter too much, but the idea is now that Sokka knows the next 7 cards on the deck. Sokka is going to have a 4/2 in the remote server. He can even afford to do install advance, so even if the Lacosta comes down to a pinhole threading that's hard fought, he can score this out. And we know, with a single Botches left in this deck, there's no way to break a Thimble Rig what needs to be at most 4 times, let alone a Nisei counter. So even like 6 times. This is a lock.
Yeah. This is a hard lock. Runner's only chance here, I think, is that there's more points in HQ because we know R&D is completely clean. Archives is completely clean. This remote is locked out. I think this is checkmate unless there are
Yeah.
points in hand.
But you would assume if there's points in hand, he would pad it with 3 other non-agenda cards, right?
Yeah, that's probably what I would go for because I feel like that's how I run the probabilities and try and control those. But you know, I think it is like I don't think you have choices here as hams, but to
Yeah.
treat that as the threat, right?
Yeah, it's really hard. Again, Thimblerig, a 2-cost ice, Rain and Reverie special, such a cool one. But now R&D totally safe, no face downs in archives. Hams is aware here. He has one more turn. In the remote server, looks like a 4-2. Again, this was seen off bacterial programming. So even if the Lacosta comes down, with 3 credits is all that Sokka needs to do. Advance, advance, advance. There's even a chance he can set it up that he has on top of the deck a subliminal messaging, which I'm pretty sure is in the deck. And if that comes off the top of the deck, he can even score it on 2 credits if it's all perfectly set up.
Yeah, there are 2 subliminal messagings in the list, so that could set Sokka up to spend a lot of money here if need be. And the runner's options are going to be pretty limited in terms of getting accesses. I think Ham's taking his time trying to figure out are there any lines that he may have missed to get accesses here. I think it's very difficult. Probably, ideally, he would have a card that forces an R&D shuffle, but I don't. There's not very many of those in the format, and there's definitely none in this SL list. So it is a bit of a thing here. It's like it's very hard to imagine even some outlandish paths out of like this remote. I think just can't go
No, it's
anywhere.
impossible. It's
Basically,
impossible to deal with this remote with the known deck list. It's literally not possible. That's such a wild sentence, but you just can't run it.
yeah. I'm like, if you got 2 botuluses down, but then you only have 2 clicks, and
Yeah,
there's
that's
no
not
way
good.
there. Well, okay, so I think the sequence would have to be something like somehow land a Katorga breakout to put the labor rights back in, and then like labor rights into running hot and 2 botuluses, hit the running hot, draw botuluses with clicks, and then like get it on the table. And I think you're probably still clicks short on
Yeah,
that
and they
kind of
just
line.
Nisei the Katurga, right? Like it's hard.
Yeah, it is very hard. I mean, even, yeah, there's just a lot of options here for Sokka. He's set himself up. It feels like we've got mate in 2 on the board, and runners just trying to check that there was no mistake in the calculation here. But I'd be pretty surprised if there was one. Though again, if there's 2 points in hand, that could just be it. Like that
Yeah.
is, I think, the out for the runner here. The bacterial does suggest that's maybe not the most likely outcome, but I think it's the only line you have.
Oh, MU's full. Wait, we're going for it. This is not possible, is it? Second click, run the remote server. That's a botchus. We're now going to roll it back. So this means we can lamb through it once. After you lamb through it once, there's no way to break it the third ice in. You'll push it further down. Now you have 2 clicks left. Ag Infusion can boop you on the return, and then Nisei Mark II can boop you on the return. This is simply not possible.
Yeah, yeah. I think Hams wants to try and make Sokka like
Do
push it
something.
down, but it's this doesn't accomplish a whole lot, unfortunately, for Hams here.
There's just too many tools. Again, Ag Infusion tool. We have the Nisei Mark II tool. One of the lines, you can maybe install one of your pieces of hardware, get some sabotage, and hope running R&D with a finality sees deep enough. But there's like, again, a bunch of reasons why that won't work. I think we've let the end of the run. I think Hams realized how that run is going to end. We're running HQ, just showing the hand there.
Showing
Hedge fund with the
hands,
Tatubola. Top deck.
yeah,
Just
nothing.
showing.
No, I think.
He's just showing him the deck. That's a concession.
Yeah,
Good
yeah.
game.
I think just showing the checkmate. I think that is a nice way to end this here. It's
Oh, back
bacterial
pro
on the
on the
very
bottom.
bottom. Wow. Yeah. I mean, there was not that many agendas left, but meant that there was a lot of control for Sokka there over the agendas.
Nancy into Thimble Rig. There's no way to break that either. If you want to deal with the Nancy, the Thimble Rig cannot be painted. That's a really well structured server in general. What a clinic from Sokka, mind you. He's only lost 1 game so far, and now he has to continue to lose none if he wants to take the title. Huge shout out to Hams, mind you, all these players from the same Vancouver meta, and we're going to be off to a final soon of Sokka returning against Solomir. Both Vancouver players out here down in, I want to say Bellevue, Washington. I'm pretty confident.
All right. It looks like we're going to be back in 15 minutes or so. I most likely will be stepping out for the rest of the night. Andre will still be here, and I believe Peter will hopefully be rejoining us for the finals. So that should be very exciting. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Thanks, everyone, for the kind words. And yeah, excited to watch those finals. And everyone, see you in a bit.
Jeff, thanks so much for all the streaming. You did all the casting yesterday alongside Peter as well. But thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
See you. We'll be back in a bit. Hello and welcome back to the 2024 West Coast Nationals at Cascadia. My name is Andre from the Match Ball Grid. Happy to be with you today for the finals. We've been, again, 50 players that came here for the weekend. We're down to just 2 players left, 2 Canadians crossing the border. We're going to be seeing a great finals between Joe at Solomir on the left, playing Thule, and I believe a Sable deck we saw a bit of on stream a couple of turns ago. And then on the right, we have our 2-time world champion, our East Coast national champion just a week ago. That's Sokka. He's only lost 1 game so far this weekend, and he has to lose no more. This is double elimination. Double elimination means, again, players will play until they've lost 2 games. They'll be removed. So if Sokka needs to win this Lat versus Thule matchup to reset the bracket and come back in for that grand finals reset. Hopefully you've been doing well. Again, huge shout out to all the organizers of this event. This is the 2nd year of Cascadia, and I know Cascadia last year was just a phenomenal in-person Continentals event. Great to see you back this year with the Nationals level event, and still just such a fantastic scene out there on the West Coast. And it looks like I'm not alone. I might be joined by Peter H. Peter, how's it going?
It's going great. How are you?
I'm doing well, just in time. We have our mulligans and shuffles coming out. I don't know if you caught any of the top cuts so far. How was your day yesterday on doing some casting?
Oh, it was fantastic. We had a lot of very exciting games of Netrunner, low on breakers, fast and high on aggression and damage. So I'm not sure how the top cut has been, but if it was anything like yesterday, it was certainly exciting.
It's been great. We've seen a fair bit of aggression and damage as well. We just got to see Sokka kind of build an absolute wall of an Ag Infusion matchup into an Essa, just struggling to get any sort of purchase. But we're going to have a really wild finals here. Again, Solomir seed 6 versus Sokka on seed 1. We're going to talk about this matchup. This is a Thule list, and a lot of the West Coast players are playing this Thule list. This is the sort of assets versus traps versus core damage sort of Thule. How much experience do you have into this matchup? There's a lot of cards for a lot of folks. They've had to figure out what they do. There's been a lot of readers over the last couple months.
Yeah, personally, I don't have a ton of experience into it, except in the sort of very early prototypes that were coming out around Borealis. So definitely, I'm not as familiar with it with all the innovations that have come since the Liberation Cycle has been released. But I've picked up a fair amount from watching the games yesterday. We had Thule on a couple times and saw a variety of different lines and ways to play around it with some different runner decks. So I'm curious to see how Sokka is going to tackle it with his Lat, which probably isn't as teched out as the World Tree deck that we saw yesterday on the stream.
Yeah, so this matchup actually happened. This is the matchup that dropped Sokka down to lower brackets a couple rounds ago. This happened off stream, like off screen. This wasn't the streamed matchup, but Sokka actually lost the game after taking 4 clicks. He ended up stealing a false lead in remote server, and then that was just responded to by a distributed tracing. Mind you, a card that says, have a tag if you stole an agenda on your last turn, and end the line. He had fewer than 4 cards in hand. So I don't think we're going to see that opening. We'll see how deep those scars run and whether he's going to be a bit afraid of that early interaction, but has no doubt that it's going to color how this matchup plays out. We've seen a lot of ice-light decks. In fact, we had an NEH deck in the top cut with no ice. This is nearly no ice. It's on 3 ice and a Blade of Barrier, a Gatekeeper, and Jack Warundi. I think the version of this list I'm more used to is only on 2, but the Blade of Barrier sneaking in there. Wondering how...
And, Corpse really seem to be eschewing a lot of that ice unless you're on Sokka. It seems you either go pretty hard one way or pretty hard the other. And some of those lists that are trying to get in the middle, we've seen some icier sports metal and PE decks have done okay, but there's certainly a huge range of ice that Corpse are throwing out these days.
Yeah, it's generally the extremes, which is pretty fun to see. Now, this Thule deck, how it works, we're looking on 12 agendas. There's versions we saw over the weekend that weren't on Aqua projects or on more 2-pointers. This is on a lot of 1-pointers as well. False Lead, Hyperloop Extension. Orbital Superiority is our 2-pointer for Win Condition, and we're looking at Luminal to Ikawas. So there's 12 agendas. Very importantly, Thule doesn't give an additional cost to steal. It is just an effect that happens. So if you ever run into an agenda, you're either taking core damage unless you're playing a click and 2 credits, which is a fair bit of tax. It's like removing a tag attached to every single agenda, except you kind of have to do it. And core damage matters. As soon as you're on 4 hand size, firstly, that's going to be just a nightmare for Lat, who's going to struggle to match hand size and get that free Lat draw. But of course, the fewer cards in hand, the easier it is to die to Hypoxia and end the line.
Yeah, and I think one thing that's really dangerous about this kind of Thule deck is its ability to generate so many different ways to hurt the runner. There are a myriad of kill lines for the Corp, and that makes it really tricky to play around all of them at the same time. If it was just one line, maybe you have a method to avoid it, but because it can involve scoring agendas off the table, sometimes it's if you trash assets, sometimes if it's if you steal agendas, it's really hard to play around everything at the same time. And as you say, if Lat takes 1 core damage, it shuts off one of the big preventative measures that Lat can have against getting flatlined.
SMC, we're charging overclock. I'm not sure what we're going to be pulling out here. I think Cupulation, both also Parisha are some of your options to deal with assets. Mind you, bottom of the deck, Parisha coming in for 2 credits off of the overclock. That's going to give you Iqua on the table. That is now 2 clicks and 2 more credits to steal. It takes you to threat 3, which is also someplace you don't want to be with 2 Oppo researches in the deck. Also, Public Trail is alive and well, so even on turns where you interact and your credits aren't high, Oppo research into end of line or Hypoxia end of line can just close games out of nowhere. I don't think Sokka's taken this.
No, you see him thinking about it. That card on the table threatens him very little, and now it's good to know where it is. I doubt that he's going to be interested in.
Oh, he's taken it.
Oh,
He had the overclock credit, so it cheapens it a fair bit. Mind you, that's 4 credits on overall. So now Oppo Research is on threat 3. It is 7 credits to fire. We're going to draw and pass the turn off Rashida sneaking on the table. That is a huge start, putting that on the table. I wonder whether Joe is happy with that going or expected that to stay.
I think it really depends on what he has in his hand and what he draws off that Rashida to respond to it. That's potentially an enormous tempo swing, and if the Corp can sort of dig into that tempo swing and throw like you say an Oppo research on top of it, then that's a big deal. But if the cards aren't in hand here for the Corp, that could just be 3 free points. And we're seeing what looks like triple install here. That Sokka would feel pretty good if this was a triple install turn thing.
Yeah, no punishment there. Distributed tracing now is going to have fewer windows with 3-pointer. But that is, yeah, almost there. Forgot the Rashida credits. Looks like we took there. But yeah, 3 more cards on the table. Now, Mr. Hendrick is a really tricky one in this matchup because it's an upgrade if you find it and the Corp reses it, pay 2 credits. You either lose the rest of your turn or you take a core damage, which means you're not highly incentivized to check click 1, the sort of like Hannah strategies that we've seen Sokka use to disassemble near Earth Hub. So he's going to take some time here because Gaslights on the table are really important to find those win conditions. This can be tricky. The Parisha is definitely, and the Dirty Laundry in hand is definitely incentivizing some interaction.
Yeah, I wonder, he has got a couple lines here, right? That Parisha, as you say, with the Dirty Laundry means checking one of these remotes feels super nice. If he finds a Regolith off the table here, if he finds another Rashida and is able to trash those while making money, that feels great. But I'm wondering if he wants to take a quieter turn and sort of reconstruct a board state here that can respond a little bit more to the runner. Maybe get out something that's going to give him consistent credits that don't require trashing assets. It's this big strategic decision point for him here.
Yeah, he has a great hand. Anacom, Dirty Laundry, Creative Commission as well. Like those are all tech cards. We also see a Stone Ship Chart Room. And just having cards in hand that you can use to not die is really important in this matchup. Draw. We're going to get a Lat draw as well. Mind you, Creative Commission drawing 1 and going to check for Spin Doctors for sure. I think we see a bit into Joe's hand. I think he has the Distributed Tracing. Just a false lead on the table. Score 3. This card is so cursed. Peter, can you explain how this thing works?
Yeah, so false lead is an agenda that once the corpse scores it, at any point during the runner's turn, if so long as the runner has at least 2 clicks left at a paid ability window, the corp can forfeit this and force the runner to lose 2 clicks. This is extremely dangerous in this kind of Thule deck because if the runner runs click 1 and sees an agenda, and then you forfeit the false lead, the runner is either out of clicks entirely for their turn, or they've had to take a core damage. And both of those are frightening prospects right after you've stolen the agenda.
Of course, also Oppa Research is alive and well. If you ever get that 7 credit threshold, you can give the runner 4 tags, and barring the 1 copy of Hannah, Wheels Splinter in the deck, you're just going to end your turn with 2 tags.
Yep, and having 2 tags is not fun against a deck that wants to land multiple Epoxias potentially and end the line. Laundry on HQ, probably a little safer than any of the stuff on the remote. Hendrick notably does not work out of HQ.
Ooh.
So
Point orbital superiority. We're going to
Oh
pay
my
2 credits and a click here. Mind you, now You want to ask, do you want to use the false lead? You always have to check these windows. It's an if able clause, so you can't use it at times where it doesn't fully make sense. Drawing in there to the sure gamble. The question is whether the Oppo research, the gaslight is there, but money is going to be a bit of a rate limiting factor. Now, any single axis can be at Stone Ship for a bit more protection. That's a great start for Sokka. Oh, Spin
Yeah,
Doctor denying the draw.
Yep, that's a neat trick here with Spin Doctor that you can do. Very irritating for lat players. It's not necessarily signaling that a kill is coming here, especially with Stone Chip on the board. But because the Corp is able to res Spin Doctor between Lat's discard step and when the draw would trigger, the Corp can adjust their hand size, whereas Lat needs to match it and prevent that card draw. Now, if the Corp is thinking that they're already going to res Spin Doctor, then it's not necessarily a huge cost. It's not like they're giving anything up. And it's just going to be the two cards for them and then deny the runner a little bit of value. Usually, you don't really see these Thule decks playing that kind of long-term value game where that feels relevant. And here we have that's I believe a Tranquility Home Grid coming out,
That
a card
is.
installed on top of it, taking the money.
We could see a bit of Joe's hand there. We saw at least one Gaslight, two copies also of a Riot Suppression, which is a super important card, offering two bad lines for the runner, either a single core damage or losing 3 clicks on the following turn. That can be a no turn if you also get MC Austerity on the table. So this could be the Gaslight on top of the Tranquility Home Grid. Mind you, just a very, very robust economy utility upgrade with a very, very hefty trash cost to boot.
Yeah, definitely tough to take down. And Parisha, if I am remembering correctly, only works on assets. It does
That's
not,
it.
like Miss Bones, help out with upgrades. Makes it a little bit more awkward here if you're trying to get rid of something like a Tranquility Home Grid. Now, if this is a Gaslight on the board, what do you think Joe's going to be looking for out of the deck? And ices it. One of the
I think
three ices it.
maybe a hard hitting news if something gets trashed. I'm worried. Well, not worried, but I'm wondering if Sokka is just going to go in for a deep dive. He has 2 in the list here, and when he's on game point, it's hard to interact with deep dive, obviously with the false lead. But if you can get the false lead to fire on a turn where it's just to stop the deep dive and not to, confirm lethal, just stealing a 2-pointer from this deck is kind of doable.
Yeah, definitely the deep dive is going to be really big for Socket here, and probably Joe is going to be thinking about it as well. We are in an open deck list environment, of course. This being the cut, so players should know what they're up against. And deep dive is enormously valuable. It means not needing to really interact with the board, not needing to make that many runs onto centrals. The runner isn't fishing around just to pull something out and potentially, hitting a little one pointer. They can dig 8 deep into R&D if they make all 3 central runs and then just pull the 1-2 pointer that they need. Now, Ikawa notably would be fairly well protected unless Wheels gets
Yeah.
installed here because you need the extra click. So that I think does provide Joe a little bit of protection from specifically the deep dive dig. But Sokka having to think has we see a breaker in hand. That's a Unity, I believe.
Yep.
Um,
I think we see Diesel as well. It's not Wheels obviously is going to be huge in the matchup for many, many different reasons. I'm interested too whether DJ Fenners comes down, whether we go for Sable potentially for that extra click gain, another way to help off the deep dive. Propeller just being installed, mind you, there's only 3 ites in this deck, 1 of each type, so Ablative Barrier is now called for. We also are getting that lat draw, so Gaslight not firing here. Only on 7 credits. It looks like another Tranquility Home Grid. We're just going to continue to push ourselves forward.
Yeah, and that upgrade is so powerful. It does a lot for the economy of these HB decks that want to keep installing things in remotes. And it looks like going to immediately then res a Regolith on top of it, and then click the Regolith twice, I believe. So there should be 9 credits left on top. So the corp here getting their money up so that they can, as you say, threaten that Oppo research for full value, and also still have the money to follow up with end of the line or other threats.
There
It's
has to
still
be an agenda in here.
yeah, you're thinking, and if he rips the 2-pointer here, it's a big deal.
Riot Suppression, mind you, a lot of text on that card. It's a reprisal card, so you can play it after a turn that a corp card has been trashed. It's kind of like Oppo Research. I think we're going for the deep dive. I think he's now second click going R&D off the top of the deck. Looks like it stays here. So the question is, if you want to false lead, you have to false lead now. We're running Archives Deep Dive. If we find a 2-pointer, the game is over here. We're going to reset the bracket. Looking at 4 cards, we see a 1-pointer. We find a 2-pointer and another. That's a handshake soccer. Resetting the bracket. 1 game is all he's losing so far. We are going to flip the script here. Zaya, excuse me, it's going to be Sable versus Ag Infusion. Bracket reset,
And
grand finals.
wow. So really, actually, very good call on Sokka's part to go for that Ikawa early. We were originally thinking, oh, maybe that's a little dangerous. But of course, if he doesn't steal it there, and Joe is holding a Spin Doctor in hand, Joe can
It's gone.
over-install onto the scene agenda and then throw it away, so it's not sitting there as a danger later on. And Sokka basically called it out. I don't think that the Corp is going to be able to hurt me too much on turn one, and picks up enough points, just a pretty quick game. And I expect feels good to be out of that one after how things went last time.
Yeah, that's a very frightening matchup. There's definitely a bit of tech on Sokka's side, but his hand was phenomenal. And we still saw setting up that win condition with the riot suppressions, the gaslight. It just required one misstep to capitalize on. And you saw Joe had access there. Solomir had access to the false lead, but decided, hey, I don't think it's likely you win off of R&D. I need to keep this for another win condition for a hard hitting news off the gaslight. And or sorry,
Yeah.
not research.
I
Bracket
think
reset.
it really makes sense for the Corp to try to play to their outs there. They can't, Joe can't go throwing away a false lead just to protect one deep dive. There's going to be another one coming out.
Yep.
It's just essentially costing the runner 2 clicks. That false lead is very important for setting up those kill lines onto the runner, those flat lines. And so pitching it there just to be safe from a deep dive one turn when it could come the next is probably not going to be the call.
So we're flipping over the other side. We just saw Sokka in the previous round playing this Ag Infusion list, and this Ag Infusion list is kind of what you'd expect. It's a mid-range Glacier build. It is not on the heaviest, slowest side of what you can imagine from Ag Infusion. I've heard Sokka talking about this, how you're trying to change the deck and make it a bit faster against the late game Shapers, against the late game Hoshikos with their turbines. So we're moving away from the Biovaults. We're going faster with Anoetic Void. Obviously, Charlotte Cassador, one of the most important Jinteki cards that came out in Rebellion Without Rehearsal, and it just does so much work on top of so La Costa City Grid.
Yeah, and I know Sokka's probably a little bummed to be moving away from Biovault. That's a card that I personally very much like, that he likes, that has done good work for him in the past.
Oh yeah.
But in this format, it's Biovault is just not good enough to defend you against these kind of monstrous rigs that, say, a World Tree Arasana or even just a regular Lat deck can put together once they have Turbine and all their breakers out. The value from those is just too much, and it's understandable that he would want to be a little bit more agile with that Anoetic Void.
Now, this matchup, these players have definitely, I imagine, practiced before from the same meta. This is going to be Solomir now pivoting to Sable, Nusha, Sintashta. So we're looking at some mark action here. And this is what I think a lot of people would call a reg criminal deck. So nothing too fancy. A lot of the fundamentals. If you were watching or playing a Worlds last year, the sort of second place Cable Carnage, Sable Carnage deck, that's what we're looking at. A single copy of Twinning. We're on Mystic Miami as one of our easy ways to go get the Twinning charges, a single Chesva otherwise. We're not on Paladin Puemo. And I think what is a bit notable is our influence spend. We have 2 Dr. Nukas for card draw, Echelon and Unity for Great Breakers. You're going to value those once you're set up into Ag Infusion, but 2 copies of Stoneship Chart Room, which I do feel like is maybe Solomir teching for his own Corp deck, which is not an uncommon thing you see amongst people's own decks.
Yeah, and Stoneship is it has a lot of other neat little elements of this criminal thing. Criminals, I think, are known for manually drawing a little bit more frequently than, say, Anarch or Shaper.
Yeah.
And so, worst case scenario, if you're a deck that expects to click to draw a fair amount, Stoneship is at least mostly invisible in the deck. Because if you draw it and then you install it and trash it to draw 2 cards, it's basically the same as clicking to draw twice. So it's not like it's that terrible if you do end up drawing through it. And also, you can pop it to charge for an extra twinning counter. It's a very flexible little card that does a lot here. So I think that may definitely make sense as an include. And as you say, we're going to get some good, honest netrunner here. This is going to be fairly reg decks against each other.
Yeah.
We had one piece of ice not interacted with last game, and I think we're going to see a lot more here.
I think we're going to see a lot more, and maybe in a way that's really difficult for some of those criminal tricks. Mind you, we're looking at 13 run events, and Ag Infusion classically is very good at diffusing run events, particularly central targeted or specific server targeted run events, because Ag Infusion, that ability is a bit of a read for sure. But in short, when once per turn, when the runner is about to approach an unresed ice, the corporation can choose to trash it, and then choose a different server, and the runner will be encountering the outermost ice on that server. Now, encountering is a really important term here, because corporations are only allowed to res ice on approach, which means that while that will still always move someone off the server, ideally you have the outermost res on a different server that is something frightening, like an Anansi, a Saisantan, something that is expensive to deal with, because the runner who tried to diversion of funds of HQ is now face planting into a big old sentry.
Yep, and that Anansi is going to be certainly notable here. Echelon doesn't have quite as good a numbers into Anansi as Carmen does. I believe it costs 6 to break if you're looking at 3 base strength plus the 3 to boost, and then 1 for each subroutine. So Anansis can get pretty taxing into this, even with Chesva helping out. Chesva will bring that math down to 4, but that's the number those are the sort of numbers that I'm sure the runner is going to have to start thinking about here, unless the goal is just to run down the Corp on centrals.
Yeah,
Now,
rundown's cool. Sorry?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to
I
say,
was basically going to ask.
yeah, running down is like a kind of a fun strategy here. Sometimes the economy and Ag Infusion can be a bit fragile. If you can contest the Lacostas, the Charlottes, the Rashidas, they don't have too much else besides Hanse's and hedge funds, which they're still pretty fine. But I think one of the notable changes in this list is we're not on Mavirus. So if you can get Amakua going, and if there's no Lacoste on the table, Sokka just has to take a whole turn off and purge just to set the runner backwards. If you get that Amakua up to 5 strength, you're breaking every single ice. I guess 6 strength if you want to deal with the bronze as well, but that'll get you pretty far, Amakua.
Yeah. Notably, Jinteki is a faction that has some higher subroutine counts than other factions. So it's not just strength that the ice is relying on here. And still, a high strength Amakua, Sokka is going to be obligated to purge that out if it's getting up to 6. But we might see him, if that Amakua does get going, be able to hold on just a little bit longer on the natural tax of the subroutine count of his ice. Not facing down a buzzsaw here, which is a big thing for cutting through a lot of those multi-sub code gates. And we don't have anything for Sentries just yet that's quite as efficient as Buzzsaw Cleaver with Turbine support. But it looks like Sokka is just taking a install to ice. Take credit. Very quiet, safe first turn.
That die, mind you, is a bit hard to tell from this distance. I believe that's an HQ mark. So that is, if you run that, Sable will give you a click back. It's kind of hard to face check here. If it's a Nancy, you could lose the game. We have a diversion of funds in hand that you want to connect early, and the first turn is so important to see how Sokka protects Centrals, how Sokka protects HQ specifically against Criminal can be very volatile. But now it is going to be a bit of work before we get comfortable enough to face check. And Dirty Laundry Archives to get the Amakua up at 1 strength gets you most stuff. 2 strength gets you through at least the unfortunate Saisentan face check, so we can actually start interacting relatively quickly on a 2 strength Amakua.
Yeah, and I think Saisentan is going to be the big concern here. It's the nastiest face check for an economical price point. Anansi, obviously the big spider, very scary, but it does cost 8 credits. And as you said, Ag Infusion's economy can be a little bit softer than some other Jinteki decks. So having 2 credits there means that the runner can feel a lot safer until the corp gets to a fairly high credit count.
So we'll see if we go back again. This now is going to force a purge from Sokka at some point. 2 counters means you run HQ, you get through Anansi's, you get through Thimble Rigs, you get through Tattoo Bolas, you get through Border Controls, as much as that has additional text. So HQ might not be safe here. Maybe if Sokka can get to 8 credits, we'll get that Anansi respect, but a lot of criminals, if they're not holding breakers in hand, will just fire an Anansi to force the corporation to spend 8.
Yep. We did see, I think there was a mutual favor in the runner's hand, so didn't see any real breakers getting a little peek here. Didn't see any real breakers, I think, but definitely some important events. Sokka seems to be holding a piece of ice and thinking about where to put it. Is that a rhyme that we're looking at?
There's a rhyme in there. I saw Saisentan, I saw Charlotte as well. So it looks like install credit, exactly trying to threaten that 8 credit threshold. But if you can bankrupt the corporation to Resident Anansi, sure, you'll have Ag Infusion problems. That's Archives, right? R&D's the flask. I think Archives is like the wide one. HQ's the tower.
Yeah, I can't make it out from here, so I'll take your word for it. And I'm sure the players are going to be honest enough about it on the table that we won't have to worry too much.
So that
this is
go ahead.
I was going to say this is about what one would expect from Sokka. As soon as the turtle comes down, his goal is first ice up all his servers, and then look to purge in a position from which the turtle then can't get its counters back up. Now, you were going to say?
We're just face checking here. Yeah, exactly that. The bark on Archives, getting the free turtle counters, that's so important. And now what Sokka needs to do is you have that weird window in which he needs to res enough ice and have enough money that he can afford to purge out the turtle. Now, that is our first 5 credits spent down to 3 credits. But if you run R&D, run HQ, you're going to be redirected to that Saisentan. We're going to call event on here. I'm pretty sure that's what you want to be doing against a criminal most often, as much as the deck is half resources, half events.
Yep. So notably, this Saisentan res, this looks like a position where the corp is going to be soft to diversion of funds with HQ only 3 credits and the turtle able to break through. But being able to kick, as you were talking about earlier, key run events like diversion of funds off to another server will keep the corp somewhat protected. And Saisentan is really where you want your first piece, or Saisentan is a good piece of ice for to have as your first piece of Ag Infusion ice. You want something that's fairly threatening, and Archives is also a great place for it. Putting it on R&D or HQ sometimes lets the runner get bounced into a server and then continue their run somewhat productively. But
Yeah.
runners rarely want to be going to Archives.
We see a hand there. There's a diversion. There's a class act. I think you spotted a mutual favor. I think there's a pinhole threading as well at Catch and Alt Art. So the question is how to make forward purchase. I think the best thing Solomir could hope is that Sokka is flooding up and drawing agendas that they go nowhere. That's generally how criminal pressure does connect in the early couple turns, but just on 3 credits, it's going to be a bit hard to interact. We also drew into our Echelon, which means if we lose that to damage, if I'm just double checking, there's no recursion in this deck, so you have to be a bit precious, making sure you're not losing anything important to a face check here.
Yeah, that's certainly a danger. Shaper obviously has Simulchip to get that sort of stuff back, but Criminal with Mutual Favor is pretty good at finding breakers from their deck when they need them, but if they lose them, they're probably gone. So you see Runner here, checking Corp deck list. It's pretty important to know what sort of ice you can run against, and once you have that information, it's very valuable to just look at it every so often.
Now, looking here, notably at the Sable list, this is kind of fascinating. There are no cards, barring Sure Gamble and arguably Carpe Diem, that can give Joe credits without requiring interaction. There is no daily casts. There's no fermenters. We haven't seen those in a while. Obviously, no liberated accounts. There is nothing besides bankrolls and run events, and of course, info bounty. This is quite tricky if you're kind of locked out. And there's the purge. So now any run can throw you into that Saizentan. Now the Echelon in hand, if that comes down, it will be 2 strength. So you are still breaking it for 3 credits, but that is forcing more money out of the pockets here. But this is a well-timed purge with the Ag Confusion threat to make any server a Saizentan.
Yep. And there's an important sequencing thing here, which you'll see Sokka and other experienced players do against Turtle all the time, which is once Amakua gets a lot of counters on it, it can be tempting to think, oh, I have to purge. It's going to break all of my ice. I just need to take a turn and purge right now. But it's important to make sure that all the servers are somewhat protected before that purge happens. Occasionally, you'll have to give the runner an extra turn of running with the turtle in order to lay down some defenses so that it can't just run archives 3 or 4 times and get all its counters back. There's a no free lunch coming down. That is a way to get some indirect money.
You're right. I missed that one. That is a click for 3 credit button that you have. But I think that's like nearly it besides Carpe Diem and Sure Gamble. It's going to be hard when Ag Confusion is getting one good ice up and then every run can be financially ruinous or flatline-esque ruinous.
Yeah. So now the big question for Sokka is how to progress from this board state. There is this early dance that they've done between getting the turtle out on the runner side and the corp setting up some of their ice and their defenses. And now it's on the corp to figure out what they want to do from here. Is Sokka going to try to build out a remote? Is he going to remain comfortable on his 3 servers and try to money up elsewise? Perhaps clicking for credits, getting up money for a hedge fund or Hansei review. Maybe get subliminal message working, which could be very strong here if the
Very
servers
strong.
stay locked down.
Yeah.
So I think this is a big strategic question for Sokka at this point.
I'm interested to see if he's going to do install event Charlotte, put an ice in front of it, and say like, okay, maybe it's weak to Boomerang, but at the end of the day, I'll trade this Charlotte to throw you into archives once, and I need to do something that pushes me forward. Install event Charlotte just to gain 3 credits is not very good, but it at least requires some sort of interaction. It forces the game, and that looks like what we're going to do. It looks like it's just going to be install events credit, not even icing it up. So saying if you want to run it, you need to be able to threaten to trash Charlotte, and I'm just spending 2 clicks to get functionally, what is it, 2 credits?
I would have to check the exact math on Charlotte getting trashed.
So she trashes for 3. So you spent 2 clicks on a credit to gain 3. So it's not great.
It's 1 for 1, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, it's I guess a little bit better than you spent the card, did the click and the credit. Yeah, it's about clicking for credits, but it's one that forces the runner to do some thinking, which they don't necessarily want to do. And actually, it's something that forces the runner to probably make a run because the runner needs to say, "I'm going to go fetch that Charlotte," and then Sokka can pop it, which pulls a click out.
And Sokka needs to pop it, mind you, because the Amakua will be getting counters even if Solomir decides not to trash it. And that means, he's not discarding a card from hand. So this is like clearly not a great, like it's an ugly play, but it is what you do with this hand. And it's maybe a bit telling that the cards in hand are not worth discarding.
Yeah. This is actually a really funny and uncomfortable position because Joe here has to contest that Charlotte. If the runner lets a completely uniced Charlotte start ticking down and drawing cards and gaining credits, that's very bad. So this does kind of need to be contested. Otherwise, I think the corp is an enormously advantageous board. But there we go. See the run on it.
So she's gone. She's going to trash for 3 credits again. Otherwise, you have a server you can farm Amakua on, and obviously Sokka doesn't want that. We're up on 6 credits here. So coming to 6 is a very important breakpoint of sorts. 5 is the important number there. If we top deck a Hansei review or a hedge fund, Sokka can now start to forge some of the more expensive stuff. And Nuka's coming down. That's going to get you a bit more card draw. We saw Class Act in hand, but it's seeming a bit expensive here, especially when you can't easily dirty laundry for value. Double install
sure.
and ice. I'm guessing Lacosta into Charlotte's the best case there for Sokka, but I don't know if you're very, very quickly trying to score out an early 4-2. I'm pretty sure that it's likely more to be a Charlotte.
Yeah, maybe a 4-2 if it's an off-world office. That can often recover a fair amount of the economic investment. It would put him +1 credit relative to where he was before that, because it's 3 to Res de la Costa, 3 manual advancements for 3 more credits, and then it will gain 7. So this could be an off-world score attempt, although uh, that's unclear. I think Sokka is not necessarily a person temperamentally inclined to be extremely aggressive, but we definitely saw him take an aggressive line stealing the Iqua last game. And as you say, he's talked about trying to make the deck a little bit faster. So it's hard to read exactly what he's trying to do on this board state, whether this is a waiting Charlotte move or a push for a 4-2.
Yeah, seeing how the Charlotte went on the previous turn, it might be not the only Charlotte that Sokka has. Sokka obviously values Charlotte the way that most Ag Infusion players do. But Echelon's coming down here. It looks like there might have been a poke on HQ. Sokka might be considering whether he wants to res that, let alone redirect. And I don't think you want to quickly redirect with so much of a turn left for HQ to be farmed up by the turtle counters here. But there easily looks like there could be agendas on hand if you're thinking the remote server is Lacosta into an agenda, or Lacosta into a Charlotte, more accurately.
Yeah, that is one of the tricky things here about Ag Infusion is even as it's good for kicking the runner to a different server, with only 1 ice on each of these servers, if
Yeah.
Sokka does use that Ag Infusion ability, suddenly its R&D or HQ or even server 1 gets opened up to farm Amakua counters and potentially other run events like Diversion Funds, Dirty Laundry, or Carpe Diem. So it's a big commitment to use Ag Infusion and shoot the runner over to the Sites and Talent Archives.
Oh, I don't have confirmation on this, but I'm pretty sure the finals is not timed. So players are going to obviously take their time and think, but maybe even a bit more time than you might be used to. So buckle up. We're going to definitely have a good game here on the bracket reset. That first game was pretty fast. I think we have some time to burn.
Yeah, for sure. And as the Glacier player here, I'm sure Sokka doesn't mind having extra time to think, and probably the runner doesn't either. Some of these board states with Ag Infusion can become extremely complex and tricky to read. There's a lot of lines for both the Corp and the runner. So both of them just being able to settle in, not feel too pressured, and play a really thorough game of Netrunner is good. Of course, it's been a long day for them already, so mental fatigue is going to set in at some point. But in these crucial early turns here, I think it makes sense to really, really consider what's going on.
Now, the other options for the remote server, we do have defensive upgrades. Could be Anoetic Void, could be an early Rashida. Both of those would be quite good to protect our remote server. But I'm pretty sure this is an HQ run, and we're considering. I think the mark is on archive, so this is just a run to touch cards. And again, if you don't trash, you do get the Amakua counters if you don't steal. So this ice here, again at 6 credits, that is almost, well, it is every ice in the deck besides the Anansi's coming in at 8. And we saw some of the early draws. We saw rhymes. We saw some ice that has some amount of value border control, right? Like that fires for 1 credit, ends the run, and gives some information. So on 2 strength, the only thing we're worried about is Sice and Tons, and we can break that, of course, with the Echelon for 3.
Yeah, the it looks like Sokka was lifting up the ice to look at it. Not sure if that signal is considering a res or not. If this is something like a Tatu Bola, that might be a relatively easy commitment, just to keep the runner out here, although it does show something about what is in hand and opens up a diversion fund. Um, do we know? I've lost track at this point. What click is the runner on right now?
I think this is maybe second click. I might have been Echelon run. You're right, though. This turn has taken a minute. I've forgotten how far we've gone. But I'm pretty sure we started on 6, installed Echelon, and maybe we drew, but I think Nuka has both counters, so I think this might just be click 2. And I think that's a good time. I think you want to run early, because if the ice does get trashed, you can farm Amakua for 2 more clicks.
Yep, and very important to have both of those clicks left for diversion of funds if this ice did get trashed, because the runner, as I see it, has 3 credits and 2 clicks, and that's just enough to, well, not quite enough actually to break Sice in time.
We have a no free lunch.
With no free lunch, yeah, it would be enough to break through the Archives ice and then run back on HQ for diversion and drop the Corp to 1 credit, which would be pretty painful. Even Rashida would only bring the Corp up to 4.
I really like this no free lunch, not cracking it immediately. Sometimes your opponent forgets that you have access to those 3 credits. Obviously, you could forget you have access to those 3 credits, but like you will crack it if you draw a sure gamble and you need to play it, but you might as well obfuscate the information a slight bit. There's the border control. Res for functionally 3 credits. It's going to fire its first subroutine, which is a credit per ice. And now that's res on HQ. So Firstly, committing that res there means we won't have Ag Infusion for a bit until we install the second card, but we're also on 3 credits. That means that there's no ice that will end the run on the remote server. You can get through the Thimble rigs. Now, you might be redirected once into archives, but you can check that remote for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And might be thinking about doing just that. Obviously, with the no free lunch, could clear out a La Costa and steal an agenda if there's no res there. Um, now it's the runner's turn to start thinking about this one. Could consider just saying, okay, I've poked for my information. I'm going to back up, but I think it's often very important for there we go checking the remote server.
I
Um,
love this pressure. Joe is playing this so well, keeping Sokka, making him make those hard decisions. Every credit mattering here. If this Charlotte goes down, the second Charlotte, Sokka's going to be on a financially very tough line here. Now we have to redirect. And actually, one thing that's super notable about the ice positioning, especially the archive sites and Tom which showed up early. If you heard Sokka talk about Worlds last year, the very infamous like border control and archives, that's a pinhole play. And currently, pinhole threading is something that's accessible through the Sice and Ton. There you said, like you said, NFL. That's gonna be Charlotte. You're expecting the other one to be a 4 trash cost. I don't know if we're gonna go down to 0 credits here. That's gonna stay. That's the La Costa grid.
Yeah, it can feel kind of bad to trash a La Costa if it has, especially if it hasn't been rezzed yet. If there's
Yeah.
nothing it's putting counters on, because Sokka, as most Jinteki decks will be, is running multiple La Costa grid, excuse me, 3 in this case, and the corp only really needs 1. So you're giving up 4 credits to say, I don't think you're going to draw a La Costa in the next several turns until you need it. It's usually right not to trash that. Sokka's going to sprint here.
The top deck, mind you, last click was a draw. R&D you could have challenged if you wanted the single and the Amakua pressure. I think it's interesting. It was a Nisei Mark II on the top of the deck. It looks like that's probably going to go back. I think we also saw an extra copy of La Costa Grid. Sprint, draw 3, shuffle 2 back. Just a, system gateway, a flexible card. We are seeing more and more of it, particularly in Jinteki with these sort of like mid-range Glacier decks that want their certain cards in a certain order.
Yeah, definitely. And conventionally, it somewhat competes with Spin Doctor. But I think what you really find is if a deck is excited to run Sprint, it's probably already running 3 Spin Doctors as ways to fix sort of what your hand looks like. So sprinting back 2 cards, gonna think about what to do for the rest of his turn. Was that click for 2 credits I saw?
I think so. Yeah, he went from 3 to 5. I think he clicked for 2. So on 5 credits, the most he can res is another Sice and Ton. So we might see some pressure here. I think some bankrolls would add a bit more oomph to Joe's runs. We know what the remote server is, and this is like the awkward thing too with the La Costa grid is now that you can thread that La Costa grid because if you don't res the ice, if you touch the La Costa grid and don't trash, you're getting Amakua counters. So now there's 2 more servers that have to be protected before Amakua snowballs out of hand.
Yeah, I think probably Sokka is clicking up credits there because he says he's going to need to play it slow. He's thinking, I know I'm going to have to purge this turtle at least once more this game, and that means I'm going to have a fair amount of money left um, in order to res enough ice to protect those servers. So their poke on R&D sees
I
the
think it
card,
was
puts it back,
I
takes
think it was a
a
Sai Tan, which is a relatively reasonable draw as one of the only ice that could be broken here with the Echelon. And I'm wondering if click 2 and 3 will see the diversion of funds, whether it cracks the border control and have an open HQ for the last click to come back. But it looks like we're going for a Nuka here. A lot of cards at hand, not a lot of money. On 4 credits, we can't even hedge fund out of this. Or sorry, sure gamble, I don't think.
Yeah, that is a lot of cards in hand. And it is an interesting choice here about how to attack that border control. It definitely seems just primed to stop diversion of funds at some point this game. Um, but the big question is how soon the runner is going to want to commit to forcing the corp to do that. It's this sort of long-term question about when the runner is going to push for tempo. Because now there is this dynamic play. They say, okay, I have this card that I know is going to bust a particular kind of opening, but now they need to think about when to deploy it.
Yeah. As soon as though the second ice goes in front of the border control, right? Like it becomes a bit, I want to say, quote unquote, cheaper to dodge the diversion of funds. So there is a window there, and you see Joe's holding on to it. I wonder if he's considering the
Yeah,
discard. It's hard to get value from that card. There's very few board states in which it makes sense. Again,
yeah,
also,
definitely.
I think we see in hand a Hermes, and Hermes is kind of cool into Ag Infusion, the sort of deck that does want to keep some of their ice face down.
Yeah, really thinking about it here. Yeah, it's
We
hard to
saw,
say with that diversion fund because on the one hand, the runner does want to keep it as a way to attack HQ, But with border control there, it seems so certain that it's not going to land that maybe it's worth just throwing it away preemptively and saying, well, you have your border control, but it's not a very good piece of ice, and it doesn't matter for the twinning. All you're doing with border control against the twinning is stopping a run. It's not a card that requires the runner to commit any counters before they actually get to breaching. So
I
it
think
doesn't stop some of the multi-access here.
3 cards discarded there after click for credit. It was a bankroll, a class act. I missed the second one. I think whether that's a diversion of funds is going to be really, really telling. And starting with a spin doctor there, so we drew past the Saisentan. Saisentan is in hand already. And if you see that hand there, I don't think there's any economy operations. Oh no, there is a Hansei review, perfectly timed alongside a spin doctor if you want to get rid of agendas, let alone that extra Lacosta, I think is now either still in hand or was always in hand.
Yeah, very, very good draw on the Hansei review. And it's a card that works very well with Spin Doctor because you can discard a card and not care about giving the runner any information or even losing that card forever because Spin Doctor will be able to put it back. So very nice to feel that. And puts a second piece of ice on HQ. Might be that Saisentan, might be something else, but just saying I want HQ to be very safe. Understandable, given that we've seen no agendas hit the board yet, and Sokka probably has a couple or maybe one even after that sprint.
And now the window is closed. The diversion of funds, which he might have kept onto, is like now totally useless, right? Ice into boarding control is so hard. Sokka has so much control over that interaction there, and he's holding on to 2. I think last turn might have been his last window in the whole game. Is he holding on to 3? No, just 2, right? I think the Kurapir isn't there.
I see at least 2.
Yeah, at least 2.
2.
But that got so much tougher now. R&D is the weak server. Anansi can be rezzed on 8 credits. Braun can be rezzed on 6 credits. And those are all relatively rough face checks. One of them you can click through the first subroutine. Nuka's going to finish it up. We have the one inside job. We have a dirty laundry hard in this matchup. And we have a singleton copy of the twinning. And a very important multi-access card that, as you said, favorably interacts, or at least not disfavorably, with Ag Infusion's ability.
Yeah, this is a really tricky spot for the runner because it becomes very hard for them to attack any of these servers with the threat of net damage, ripping out the twinning. And if you lose multi-access against an Ag Infusion deck like this, the runner's odds drop substantially. The other thing here is Echelon only has 2 base strength right now because there are 2 icebreakers installed. It starts with 0 and gets 1 for each icebreaker. And at 2 base strength, it costs 9 credits to break an Anansi, a horrific sum. And so Joe, I think, simply can't afford that right now. And even if you could, would not want to pay it.
Yeah, it's going to be hard. It's like one of those situations where you might install all 5 icebreakers, but it's hard to imagine. Dirty laundry straight into R&D. There are a couple ways that this is not a successful run, but we're going to force the res and say, hey, if it is the Anansi and you have found it, deliver it. Otherwise, there are all the end the runs I'm getting through. Besides, I think you're going to struggle a bit if that is a 6-cost Braun, which is a pretty impressive res there on R&D.
Yeah, and this is an interesting call of saying I'm definitely not going to break Anansi if this is Anansi. And we've seen...
I haven't seen that in a while. Redirected to a spin doctor, it disappears. The one server that doesn't exist anymore. Now R&D is wide open, but that is so rude. Throwing 5 credits down the drain. We'll see if we can come back here. I didn't catch what was just shuffled back in. I think it was a Charlotte, maybe 2 Charlottes, but I've no doubt that if Joe has another way to go back, Mark was HQ here. He can just run R&D and get a couple more counters if he needs it. The breakpoints, though, unfortunately, are 5 as the next breakpoint.
Yeah, it's extremely funny little play there because when Spin Doctor gets shuffled back, the run is neither successful nor unsuccessful. It simply stops. So Dirty Laundry doesn't get any money there. And that suggests to me that's probably not Nancy. Maybe it was. There is a world in which Sokka wouldn't want to present Nancy there, even if it was present, because Joe has so many cards in hand that taking the 4 net damage to the Anansi doesn't feel that bad. And that might have been the consideration there on the runner's part that, hey, I'm not going to break this with money, but I have the cards in hand to tank the damage, so res it if you got it.
My suspicion that might have been a rhyme. I thought I saw that in the early hand, and I just don't know where it went. So it might have just been put on R&D as like, you know, the illusion of defense, which is definitely very powerful. Real quick, I want to mention, do you see the thing that's tied on Joe's arm?
Yes, I do. I can make it out.
Do you know what that is? Oh, Rashid off the top.
Is that a Baya band?
It's a Baya bands. Yeah, Alex sourced as a prize for this event real Baya bands from Brazil and brought up the whole like colorful batches you see on Baya bands cards. And I don't know how they're distributed, but that is a true Baya bands on his arm. That's really cool.
That is extremely cool and great of Joe to be repping it, especially runner side. Are there any Baya bands in this tournament?
No, there's not.
Oh, what a shame.
Yeah, no, we saw a couple of them at top tables, but I think that's pretty cool. Those are, from my understanding, I think like prayer or more like hope, like they're aspirational kind of messages on them, and they're attached to things for good aspirations. Rashida, mind you, trash off the top. That's obviously not going to go in the remote server anytime soon, but that also means that that's one fewer Amakua counters. And this hand here has some like pretty good value bombs. I think there's a Kurapira in there. There's a Twinning. These are all very important cards, but very expensive cards. And now going down to 1 credit is so hard to climb out of this hole. We still have to discard something here. I think the diversion of funds is probably going to be quick to go.
Yeah, and this is a pretty painful position to be in sometimes as a criminal. I've been in it myself before, where some early runs and some early pressure doesn't quite convert into credits, and then you find yourself facing down a bunch of unresed ice, no breakers installed, and very few ways to gain money. So Sokka's first priority here is almost certainly going to be to ice R&D one way or another, just to lock these servers back down. And currently sitting on, I believe, 9 credits, which is a good amount. Might be drawing for ice here.
Yep.
Can't quite make out what's in his hand. Yeah.
He has a Hansei. We know that he has. We saw an Anansi. We also saw Saisentan there, and there is now a Nisei in hand of only 2 cards. I think the biggest card that's going to matter on the corporation, or excuse me, on the runner's board state now, already is the mark. It's going to be the Hermes. The Hermes has a chance of making some wild plays where you can sneak in one good axis, which blows open another good axis. There's still a lot of agendas in the deck, all but one, but just click for 4 credits past the turnover as fast as you could imagine. Spend more time rolling that die.
Getting up to 5 credits here, which means Sure Gamble is back online for the runner. Looks like Sokka took a mandatory draw and then click to draw. Is that click to draw again? Yeah, that might be up to 5 cards in hand.
Yep. No Charlottes. We're stuck here with the basic action cards, getting our economy up, and now we're threatening to be able to res every ice on the table, as much as sometimes with Ag Infusion. You want to keep some ice face down, but now step 1 of make those defenses. We're getting towards the end of that stage. Step 2, start pushing. You can't really push behind 1 ice. You generally need 2 ice. You'd like a defensive upgrade as well. You have to play around things like Inside Job and Boomerang, and Inside Job is in the runner's hand, but Sokka has a fair bit more work to do before he's going to consider scoring out, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, and he is fortunately sitting on 18 credits, so he's built up the war chest here to res several pieces of ice if necessary. And as you mentioned, that Hermes is going to be a problem, and he's going to have to really think about it. That probably slows him down by at least a turn or 2 for whenever his next score is going to come out. And by next score, I should say first score. We haven't seen an agenda on either side this game. Fortunately, he does have Lacoste. Is that Carpe Diem I see hit the board?
That is. Now, we're not making the run. R&D was the mark there. We're going to respect some of that bigger ice. Again, you don't want to pay 9 credits for a Nancy. And one of the issues here with the Singleton Chesva, the Singleton Mystic Miami, if you're not running often, playing those run events, it's going to be hard to charge the Twinning because most of your value is coming off Mystic. Of course, Chesva's good for breakers, but the only breaker you can boost during a run here is the Echelon, and it boosts really poorly.
Yeah, really poorly. Looks like we might be pausing for some Sokka, just some little comment they were making, I think.
Third Hansei?
Third Hansei. The player's really settling into this mid-game here. I think both of them recognize the runner is not prepared to do much interaction, and yet the Corp is not prepared to open themselves up by committing to a score. So Sokka sits back, plays some events to gain money. Runner sits back and plays some events and clicks for credits to gain money. Both of them establishing some sort of financial ground for which to play the rest of the game.
Here on the remote stream, we see a bit of a wider angle. We don't have the overlay on our comms video, but you see Joe is actually still smiling and laughing. I would not be as happy in his spot. It seems like a much of an uphill battle, but both of these players are still quite good friends and trying to make the best of the situation. Sokka definitely feeling comfortable. You're assuming there's at least 2 agendas in hand, and it looks like that is the case. Off-World Office, Bacterial, and there's another copy of Off-World Office, Bacterial, and Anisei. Excuse me. There's 3 agendas in hand.
Yeah, and with this much money, Sokka's probably thinking that scoring that Nisei Mark II first is going to be the most powerful play.
Oh, yeah.
Having that counter deters a lot of runs that the runner could still try to make and force the counter out. But if it doesn't do anything productive, it's just an unfortunate trade. Now Sokka's probably also looking to use Lacosta here to play around Hermes a little bit, because if he's able to establish a sufficiently defensive remote server, Lacosta can give him the extra click, maybe 2 clicks, to play around whatever gets bounced with Hermes.
This is getting tricky here, actually. As much as like the basic action economy card for the runner has been kind of keeping them still as a threat, Kurapira has come down. That means there's no ice in the deck that we can't break, money willing. The only code gates in the list, if I'm not mistaken, is Thimble Rig. Sometimes a Rhyme can make that 1 strength, but Amakua on 1 here means that if you're pushing an agenda to the remote server, a run on HQ, while you might have to deal with the border control, while you might have to deal with Ag Infusion, once those threats are gone, it's an open HQ, and there's definitely agendas in there. We've only seen 1 sprint, 1 Spin Doctor for filtering. The Spin Doctor shuffled in non-agendas. And again, divide by 5 tells you there's 2 agendas in hand, if not 3.
Yeah, definitely. This is a situation where Sokka definitely needs to keep respecting the runner. Now that Joe is up to, I think, is that 8, 9 credits I'm seeing?
Yeah, it might be
Um,
8.
8 credits. They have enough to start interacting with a fair amount of this ice. 6 to get through an Anansi, and then 2 to 3 for most of the other things. A lot more for a brand, but we'll have to check on that.
Yeah, tattoo bulls are also really interesting. Like, it's a really good card against criminals. Of course it is, because their interaction puts you forward on credits. But you cannot let the criminal with a Kurapira farm a tattoo bola and have that payoff be bypassing a 6 strength 3 brawn. So that's a really tricky interaction. There's also a bunch of board states in which you fire border control a bit earlier than you might hold on to, just because the Kurapira farm is a bit rough. But we're pushing an agenda install ice, advance. So now half of HQ, I believe, is an agenda. Obviously, on the table, we know there's an agenda, unless it could be a Charlotte. But on top of Lacosta, you don't have a big reason to pre-advance the Charlotte unless we have some advanced mind games here. So this is a huge turn because we have time here to res the Lacosta, to score out the agenda, repair the damage that Hermes can go through. And with 8 credits, the question is, where are the agendas? What is the ice on HQ and how much pressure? Do we have an inside job? Do we have a boomerang? What are we running here?
Yeah, I think it's a big question. Because of that Lacosta, we're assuming that this is going to be a 4-2, and Sokka is going to get the time to reinstall whatever piece of ice gets balanced with Hermes. Um, but that means that it's really on the runner now to take advantage of this window basically before it's really opened up. Sokka's
Yo,
not going to lose that much money or that much tempo for this score out. So this is the window right now. It comes before the agenda is scored rather than after, and needs to decide to either try to interact with the agenda or counterattack. And as you say, HQ is pretty full right now.
that is such a good mark. HQ Mark now really forcing the hand here of the server that we know should be run with our top-down camera. Half of the hand is agendas here. Click when we're running it. We need to see what this ice is. We can always inside job back. If it's rezzed, you can make into HQ. The worst is the board control. It's Tattoo Bola. So that can become another ice from hand. You break that for 1 with the Kurapira instead of the Amakua to get that charge counter. So we now know, of course, there's a tattoo bowl in hand, but there's 2 more cards in there. This keeps Ag Infusion alive and well, but that's going to charge another Kurapira counter. Bronze are looking a bit manageable sooner than later. We're letting the access. Sokka saying, I'm going to hold. Half the cards in hand are agendas, but he needs to play it cool. We know he has access to board control, but he's going to say, just don't touch it. Getting the click back here as well. 50-50, huge swing here. Finding the tattoo bowl with the worst access.
The one card he already knew was in there. There's a world here where I think Sokka's actually fine if Joe steals an agenda. I mean, losing something off the board, getting his agenda bounced with the Hermes is pretty unfortunate, of course. It sets him back a turn. Um, but at the very least, these agendas are. He's probably going to draw another one before this game is over. And so one agenda in his hand is probably dead. He might as well give up a bacterial, get a bunch of card draw and R&D fixing from it, and then keep playing from there. So I think overcommitting defense on this HQ, such as perhaps popping that border control, would have been a mistake. Losing the tempo because of Hermes, big deal, no doubt. But I think he doesn't want to overcommit early to the first agenda steal of the game by being too defensive.
Yeah, I think if he popped the boarding control, it's way too big of a tell, and then he has 1 ice on HQ. But I think if there's a chance that if Joe finds the agenda steals the Hermit, he bounces one of the ice on the remote server. Because, of course, he knows that's not a defensive upgrade. That's 1 ice, and he has in hand an inside job. If he gets redirected with Ag Infusion, he can just run back, and then he can steal 2 agendas and be on game point in 1 single turn.
Yeah, for sure. I think the big worry there would be which ice does he bounce, and is one of them that's left a Nancy? Because if
Oh,
he gets
that's
thrown into
true.
a Nancy with this amount of money, and after playing an inside job doesn't
It's
protect you that much from it. So
You just take the damage. You got 5 points. Yeah, it's not going to be the best case scenario, but we still have 4 clicks left here. Got the run back on HQ. We're going to start by drawing up Sokka surviving that really good 50-50 there that would have a huge impact on this match. The ice in front of HQ, we don't know what it is, but Anansi is definitely the most expensive, and we did brave it with fewer than the credits required to break. Now
yeah,
we break Anansi for 6 credits. Mind you, we only have to boost once. It's still 1 credit more than we have access to. Amaku counter. We're now on 2. That's very important to remember that trigger.
yes, very important. Because Amakua probably isn't going to run away with the game, as you sometimes see happen on turns 2 or 3. But keeping an Amaku around on a criminal board means that as this back and forth continues, as they poke for runs on centrals or try to interact with a remote occasionally, Turtle can still tick up. And once it
Yeah.
starts to get to 4, 5, once it gets to 6, then you're forcing a whole other purge out of the corp for a card that no longer amounts to the entirety of the runner's board state. So keeping this thing around can still be pretty valuable.
I think now we've clicked up to 5, so we might have been at 4 before that. I'm thinking he's keeping clean rows of 5. Has a pair of clicks left. Again, charging their moats over, forcing some res as R&D too. Just forcing a res can be valuable, but we know there's Sice and Tons. We can deal with that. It's the Anansi that is the most expensive for sure, as much as 8 credits is going to do a bit of work here. Now, you're expecting this to be a 4-2 with Lacosta. That means that Sokka will have the ability to either push the next agenda or more likely to be able to repair the damage that Hermes is going to present.
Yeah, and
Is
as
he
you said,
Pinhole Archives here? There's
Pinhole
no.
Archives is an interesting play, but I
It's
think
so expensive.
it's so expensive. It would cost 3 credits to break. It's 1 credit for the pinhole, and then it would
Yeah,
be
4
you
more.
crash the Lacosta. Yeah, it's a bit expensive to do that. Here's the Lacosta coming out, and I would assume that this is the Nisei Mark II, given Sokka's current money situation, has 20 before doing these advancements.
Yeah, we
Um,
can see the hand. That is definitely the Nisei. The question is whether he's going to push it. He is. We got an Earthrise Hotel on the other side. The first 2 points there for Sokka. That is an end run counter. For the unfamiliar, that is the FFG 2012 Minority Report style art of our psychic clones. And 1 click left here to repair. HQ still has 5 points in it. The question is whether we're going to spend this click to push it onto the Costa or just to repair central servers. Looks like
yeah,
that's
it's
Tattoo
big
Bola.
big question here. Might be installing the Tatu Bola. Um, it's interesting whether or not to commit to the Tatu Bola or something spikier here. The Tatu Bola basically says, yeah, you'll have a Kurapira counter, and my first brand encounter is not going to be that substantial. Um, but getting the money and continuing to force even just a credit out is still something. And the big thing on this board right now is that Nisei counter. Having a universal end the run that the runner can no longer stop or really interact with outside of Lucky Charm, which I don't believe is in this runner list, um, is extremely powerful, game
Yep.
defining a lot of the time.
Incredibly difficult here. Again, the diversion of funds, they might still be in hand, and they're a bit wishful thinking. Border control, Ag Infusion, Nisei token, they're hard. If they land, they will land pretty poignantly, but now there's so many lines Sokka has as defensive options here. Now, deciding what to do with the last click, we know the Tattoo Bull in hand. Reviewing the deck list here, it looks like an ice goes back on the table. I think I saw the swippity swappity there. I think that's a Tattoo Bull, though. Draw 2, Bravado coming in. That is playable on 3 credits as much as the face checks can get pretty rough here. I think we're looking for a Carpe Diem as a way to recover on economy. He rolled that die real good. Only
Yeah,
counts if it's on the table.
great
Alrighty, here's the mark. You saw Saisentan, so you're aware how bad the face check can be. Now, we have 7 cards in hand, so you're not dying to a Saisentan if you do rip it. We know there's 5 points in HQ, but we're just going, I believe that's R&D for the mark. That is, mind you, the CN Tower Toronto version of the Bravado from Worlds 2022. I think one of my favorite alt arts of all time. It's so good. Anansi. We found it. That's the bad one. Top of R&D is going to be wildly safe. And while that is 8 credits, that is now going to impact the rest of the game. And as you said, Carmen and Echelon are 2 different creatures when it comes to breaking this 5 strength spider.
Yeah, it's going to be just the damage from the runner, and now this is a much scarier thing into which to be thrown by the Ag Infusion effect than that Saisentan. Saisentan, only 3 credits, Anansi, 6. So now any of these Ag Infusion triggers, much spikier, much nastier.
So Ag Infusion, or excuse me, Anansi has some strange utility subroutines, excuse me. The first lets you look at the top 5 and rearrange them on R&D. I think it allows you next to draw a card, and the runner can pay 2 credits if they want to draw a card, and then does a single net damage as the third subroutine. But most importantly, if you don't break all the subroutines in a single encounter, you just take 3 net damage, which means that, exactly as you said, inside job, bypass effects, if you're not breaking the subroutines, Anansi is going to bite, and that is altogether 4 net damage, but the ability to draw a card for a cost. So you can straight up flatline to this. And I think yesterday you saw did Banhar flatline into an Anansi on stream at least once?
Yes. Part of the big thing about Anansi is that its subroutines equal out to be only 0 damage to the runner by themselves if the runner chooses to pay credits to draw. So it's just the bypass effect that guarantees 3 net damage. But with Banhar, this notably isn't a Banhar run on this board, but with Banhar, all of those subroutines turn into net damage subroutines, and Anansi does 6 if you don't break any of it. Here, it's only going to deal 3, probably 4. It's going to deal 4 damage, and perhaps the runner is going to opt to pay 2. But with how tight credits have been for them, I think they would rather just click to draw than spend 2 clicks clicking back for credits.
Yeah, it's also scary too, right? Like if you draw into your Unity as your last breaker and then you take the damage, right? Like sometimes you want to know the cards you're losing.
Absolutely.
Corporation's going to draw. We're going to rip 1 and then 3. There's no on-access damage, no Fuji, so you can access on few cards. Losing the twinning is definitely not going to help.
That is brutal. That's what I was talking about earlier. Losing the twinning is uh, is really rough for being able to attack these centrals, because once this ice gets big, it's important to think about
Oof.
how. Ooh, what? Oh,
Pinhole,
those are.
Inside Job, and Miss Bones. 2 of those a bit more useful, but top of the deck, this is a known card, so Sokka knows what it is. It's obviously not going to be an agenda.
Yeah.
Money is okay now, and we're kept with the 2 diversions. Those 2 diversions that Joe's been holding on for this whole game. They're getting harder to land, but that's what he's left with in his hand. I think that feels pretty rough here. If those do land, though, only on, what are we on? 7, 8 credits? 9 credits, I want to say.
I see 9 credits for Sokka. I think the big tokens are 3s, the small ones are 1s.
Yeah.
So that would bring him down in money a fair bit, but I think the real trick would be actually landing one of those through the
Oh,
board
yeah.
and everything. Oh, it's rough to be on the diversion game at Dag, especially for against a player like Sokka, who is as prepared as you could possibly be for how to play around it.
We saw so many decks in the top cut that were on no ice, let alone minimal ice, and this is the exact opposite. This deck's ice has ice. So install advance in the remote server. A turtle on 3 counters, notably after we touch the top card of R&D here. We do have a Fractor. We do have a Killer. We're going to start with the Sure Gamble. Our money's okay here. There's actually no ice on the remote server that we can't get through, considering the only code gate is a Thimble Rig, and that is 0 strength. And we know there's no defensive upgrades. The question is, can you afford to run the remote server at most 3 times? Ag Infusion, Nisei Mark, and then the first run. There's a chance you can challenge this. Does it look like a Charlotte? Kind of, but not really. It's advanced.
As you mentioned earlier, because it's already been advanced with a Lacosta in the server, it probably isn't a Charlotte. There's no real benefit to over advancing Charlotte at the time, and here's going to be the challenge of the remote. And the outermost ice is a Nancy again. You really, with Ag Infusion, like to have a big, strong ice outside of the server and then unresed ice on the inside, so that the runner needs to run through the big ice before you kick them over to another one. And
This
this
is
is pretty painful here.
This is big. So I think he broke it. But now this is really important because we have the Nisei token. And if you're going to use the Ag Infusion ability to throw into the other Anansi, that one's difficult. But if you break that one, you can actually fire the Anansi on the remote server. The problem is you have to be able to fire it twice because of the Nisei token. And you just don't have enough cards for that.
Yeah, this is that sort of soft end the run effect. And
Yeah.
I say like implied end the run effect of some Jinteki ice, where the damage just becomes so overwhelming that you can't run through it that frequently.
5 cards in hand. Mind you, Hermes is another way to attack the server, but Ice is up on all servers. HQ technically soft. We're running RD here. I think Sokka knows the order of the next 3 cards, if I want to say. Looked at 5, drew 1. Mandatory drew the second. I'm not sure if that was a poke, and it's worth noting you can always run archives and pay 3 credits to get an Amakua counter. At some point, that does actually make sense when you have to break multiple Anansis on a turn. Breaking them for 3 with Amakua is a steal. But again, that is quite expensive here.
Yeah, the math on that gets a little tricky. The runner would be spending 3 credits and a click for an Amakua counter and saving 3 credits per Anansi broken.
Yeah.
Okay, so Sokka was thinking about, it looks like they're still in that run over here. And Sokka is going to trash the ice, send the runner over into R&D, and that's going to be another 6 credits for the second Anansi of the turn.
Now this Axis might get an Amakua counter. We only have 2 credits. It looks like on the top of the deck is... I can't tell what that is.
That's an Anoetic Void, I believe.
It is a Void. That's getting trashed. That puts Amakua still 3 counters. We're down to 1 credit here. Now that Anansi, you have to deal with it twice in a row if you want to force up the Nisei counter. And there's something worth being said about just running the remote server and forcing the Nisei counter. Now, if that's a second Nisei in the remote server, that's a pretty reasonable trade for Sokka. But we know that that's either an off-world office, and he's down to 4 credits. He could use the money, or of course, could just be the bacterial reprogramming to set up the final couple turns to get another Nisei, to get another Anoetic and another ice on the remote server to close the deal in 2 turns.
Yeah, given how Sokka's played it so far, I would kind of suspect that that's the off-world office, which would also re-solidify money on the corpse side, allow another ice or 2 to come down. But maybe it is the bacterial and just keep digging.
I think we see the back row in hand, so it looks like it is the off-world office with the click to spare to repair the damage from the Hermes. That's probably by rule going to have to hit the HQ ice.
Yeah, this is a really rough board state for the runner at this point. I think it's worth acknowledging just how nasty this is for them. A lot of the time, forcing reses out of the corp, getting the corpse ice flip face up, is really valuable if the runner can immediately exploit that credit cost by attacking elsewhere or not attacking that server again. But a lot of these big ice, the Anansis, are on servers that Sokka really cares about and wants to protect, and that the runner once feels like they're going to have to run again. And that's pretty unfortunate because it means that these ice, Sokka has paid for them and is not going to have to keep paying for them, but the runner is. So you will start to see this incremental credit advantage if this game drags out further. And I think it's the threat of that that is going to put more pressure on the criminal player here to make, like you said, more aggressive plays, such as forcing out that Nisei counter.
Yeah, I think that R&D boop got the Sable run mark, which is pretty sick.
That yeah, that's very funny. And I guess it's a nice little benefit of Sable there.
Yeah. As long as you roll good, that server is sometimes not the worst for you. But we see the cards in hand. I think there's another sure gamble. We just don't have a lot of money to work with. 2 credits left. 4 cards in hand. So if you want to run through that nonsense, it's going to take every single card. It's going to we're going for it. I love this face check here. We're going to look at the next 5 cards. I think it's a Charlotte, an Ice, a Hedge Fund, a Rashida, and a Subliminal as the bottom card. NSG print art.
That's 5 cards that Sokka's pretty happy to see on top, and I think he's going to take that subliminal. It's basically free money at this point, and I don't know how much longer the game is going to be dragging here. Where there's still a lot of play in it. Sokka doesn't have it wrapped up at all. This is just popping the Nisei counter. But that subliminal messaging is also going to feel very painful for a runner who has been attacking the corpse credits or wanting to, and also had difficulty consistently running through the servers.
I love here that Solomir Joe is playing like an anarch, saying, I understand that this is not going to work out for me if you don't want it to work out for me, but I have the money to contest Charlotte. But most importantly, if it's an agenda, you're probably using the Nisei counter on me. And I don't think I can win the game if you score 2 Niseis. So maybe you can only score 1, maybe none at all. And that is really important to force your opponent to use their resources before it's a 2-ice server and you have no chance.
Yeah, and it's big to think about the economic exchange here as well. What exactly is Joe giving up in exchange for a full Nisei counter? It's 4 cards from hand. And
Yeah.
in a lot of other board states, it would be a lot more to get a Nisei counter or to even threaten a Nisei counter consideration out of Sokka. So this is some good bean counting play. Not just logical aggression on his part, but just from a strict economic standpoint, I really like this move as
And 2 of those cards are diversion of funds.
well. Those diversion of funds. Yeah, so maybe it's only really losing 2 cards at this point.
Yeah, no, card totals are going to matter. Obviously, if we want to go to the Nancy again, we have another nuke at some point. We saw an early discard of the Class Act. Now, while that's obviously an immense card for many, many reasons, very importantly, it cost 4 credits. So hopefully we're going to just be drawing back up. If we get a Nuka, Stone Ship Chart Room, there's ways to just refill the hand to challenge the remote server. And again, maybe we scored that off-world office. It looks like it's almost guaranteed to score it if you use the Nisei counter. And that will be 7 more credits, which is exactly what Sokka needs. Drawing up, I do think it's a subliminal.
Yep, that's the card I would want to see in his position. There's
Dirty
the Nisei
laundry. Yeah.
Oh.
And cracking the Nisei. So we know it's an agenda there. We're going to click to draw. We're going to get 2 more cards at the beginning with our visit to the moon and that advancement there. We'll see if it's subliminal, double score, and whether we're going to push the agenda. I think we're going to keep it in hand because we can hedge fund here and score out the off-world office. Bounce HQ, though, if we want to score right now. So we might just double ice this and let it roll. Let it cook for another turn. We know R&D is totally safe. You know there's only one agenda largely in play, the 1 and 5 in HQ, if not 1 and 4. I think you can greed this agenda, the remote server, a wee bit.
Yeah, speaking of bean counting, this is some good economic play on Sokka's part. This is getting an extra trigger from Lacosta and giving him then a full turn to work with after the Hermes bounce to figure out how he wants to respond to it. With those Anansis and how difficult they've been to break, and the runner only just drawing up to 3 cards at the start of their turn, these Anansis are looking really, really defensive, and I think it's just not going to be possible for Sable then to attack that remote server again. We're going to find the mark.
HQ, we found the nuke at the cheapest card draw we have access to. That is functionally plus 6 cards over a couple clicks. You do lose 1 for the nuke itself. But now, whether you want to just be, hey, my breaker for Anansi is my face, that will work for probably enough time before the game reaches a conclusion. Going to take 2, though, pass it back. That's going to be a pretty cheap score off an off-world office, let alone subliminal messaging. Buy stocks. Is going to be scored gain 7. Hermes Bounce, you think you go for the HQ ice or the remote ice? All of it costs 1 credit.
Yeah, I think it doesn't matter too much here what the runner picks out. Sokka is almost invariably going to reinstall it. Weirdly enough, I think I would go for the remote ice because there's a chance that Sokka would actually rather have something else on HQ, given how far. Well, he's going to go for the HQ ice. Um, Given that that was installed previously and Sokka has now had more time to think about the board state, I would probably go for the ice that was most recently installed rather than the one that was last installed, all else being equal. Now, if some stuff is further into a server as opposed to further out of it, that changes your math a little bit. But given these are 2 outermost ice, it's probably a little bit safer to bounce the one on the remote there.
Yeah, I think the math is interesting because if you have an agenda in hand, you're likely like now you might have a new ice in hand that you just got bounced. So you can put it on the remote server, put a 4-2 or a 5-3 in the remote server and advance, and then threaten to score out in the next turn to win the game. So yeah, sometimes just having like obviously you have to give ice to the corporation, but the question is where would you rather not see 3 ice stacks if we're not going to respect that HQ?
Yeah, for sure. And we see Sokka looking through the heap here, the runner's discard pile, probably figuring out what sort of burst money the runner even has access to. Maybe looking for those diversion funds. Um, we see install, advance, and this is now here's that question of is he's going to install this next piece of ice, which looks to be his last click, on the remote server or on HQ.
No, HQ is totally safe, right? We've seen 2 diversion of funds removed from the game, or sorry, trashed. So the
Yep.
question is where we're going to put that. It looks like that is the eye of the Saisantan attached to those scary knives. Tattoo Bill is the other option that the runner should expect to be in hand here. But now the remote server, again, we know the next 4 cards or next 3 cards on R&D. We know what they are. Sokka has pretty good information of what can be accessed. There's no more twinning in this game, so there's no multi-access on R&D. So if you're playing around Hermes, the only threat is there a card face down on archives? I'd say no. Is there agendas in HQ? And obviously Sokka knows the answers to all these questions.
Yeah, with him having run through a couple Hanseis and some spin doctors and sprinting, he did have a lot of agendas in hand at one point, but he might just be down to his last one.
It looks like that's the case. I think he's holding 5 ice.
That's pretty good feeling as Zagan Future. When
Yeah.
he's sitting on 14 credits and 5 ice in hand, that's a lot of Anansi encounters. That's what I'm thinking.
Now, we do know that the remote server, we're looking at 2 border controls in the list, if I'm not mistaken. We've seen where one of them is. If the second one's on the remote server, that's the biggest thing that's going to impact the math here. I think a brawn is also going to be a bit challenging. We're on low credits, but also the placement of the ice is really important here because the Anansi's on the innermost. It means that the Ag Confusion ability has to be used sooner than the Anansi. So there's a chance here that if he puts all his mind to it, that Solomir can just run this remote server twice, once for the Ag Confusion boop, once again. One of those ice, he might have to break an Anansi, he might have to just face tank it, but there's a small chance. Now, another big ice on the remote server they have to play around is Thimble Rig. If there is a Thimble Rig, that can become a border control, and that can end the run out of nowhere. That's also a very, very hard play to play around.
Yeah, extremely tricky. Ag Infusion has so many different ways to shuffle the runner around and to shuffle their ice around onto different servers. So as the runner, what do you think? What do you think the runner is doing? Like, what's their out here? Are they trying to attack this remote server more? Do you think they go on centrals? What's the plan? And there's the third ice on the remote. So this is what you were mentioning is maybe pulls that HQ ice over to the remote instead of
Yeah.
reinstalling it there.
I think the last 3 or 4 draws have all been Anansi draws that you're pretty sure HQ is clean, unless it was really messed up going into the turn. And I think Archives is clean. So I'm pretty sure the only thing you can do here is figure out how to run the remote server. We've lost one inside job. We might have some boomerangs, but you probably are spending most of your time like just click 1, draw with Nuka, click 2, run the remote server, click 3, run the remote server, click 4, run the remote server. Maybe you have a Carpe Diem. Mark is HQ. Maybe this is the version of Fun's turn, but I don't think so. You don't need a lot of money to score this out. Click 1.
No, definitely not.
Hedge fund? Is that just click 1? Or sorry, sure gamble? I think it was.
I think it was a gamble. Click 1. Yeah.
So now we just have to be running again. You need to spend at least 2 clicks on the remote server, but 3 clicks on the remote server if it's Thimble Rig into border control. You need to hold on here. And even if the bacterial programming is lost, if Sokka somehow loses the bacterial programming in the remote server, that's going to be draw 9 cards, and he's going to be able to find his next agenda, let alone hopefully the next 5-3, of which there's still 3 more in the deck, and then also probably a defensive upgrade or another piece of ice, whatever he needs. So no matter what, I think he's feeling pretty happy. with the way things are going, on his way to close his 2 weeks in a row, 2 in-person national championship titles.
He's doing pretty well for himself. This is certainly a comfortable position for the Corp. The way in which this would be a scary board state doesn't actually have to do with the board state, I don't think. It has to do with how many points are in the runner's board.
Oh, that's game.
There we go. Yep. Good game. Good game to the two of them.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's Solomir saying, I can't run that. I'm going to set up and hope that is a Charlotte, hope that it's something else. But Tatu Bola into Thimblerig means that you need to spend 3 clicks running it. There you see Sokka showing you how that interaction works. It's impossible to challenge a remote server. Top and R&D is safe. HQ's only agenda is that is our 2 in a row, 2 national championships from Sokka, east to west coast, 2 weekends apart. Huge shout out, of course, to Solomir, a fantastic player, also from the same meta, going nearly undefeated in the top cut, but nearly undefeated is also what we can attach to Sokka. Well played to both players.
Well played to both of them. Very good game. I think Sokka was pretty happy to squeak his way into the reset by getting through that lat game against Tule, and then once he hit this matchup, this is admittedly going to be a lot more favored for the court. Sable Criminal here, piloted very well by Joe, very strong deck, but this, as you were saying, right at the top of the game, it's a lot of run events into a deck that's really happy to mess with run events.
Yeah, that's tricky. I want to be happy to be on the run-based criminal side, running into Nazis over and over again. But I think he tried to make the best of that, and we had an exciting game there. I don't think we're going to have the ability to have an interview. I've heard Whiteblade's microphone. I know he can hear us. It's like pretty loud in that space. And I don't know. Eric will let me know in chat if he wants to do an interview. But I want to just take a couple seconds to thank all the folks who are organizing Cascadia. This is the 2nd year in a row. And obviously it was such a huge success last year, a huge success this year as well with the Nationals. Just a fantastic turnout. And I want to take a second not only to thank the organizers, but to thank people coming out to tournaments, because without you, we would not have these great events, right? Like, organizers put in a lot of work, but if you don't come out to events, these things won't be happening. So
yeah, absolutely. Big thanks to all the players for showing up and for honestly just putting on such a good show and playing such great Netrunner over the course of this weekend. We had a lot of great games on stream yesterday and great finals today. And from what I've heard, a bunch of great games earlier in the top cut today. So big thanks to them. And of course, as you said, I want to extend my personal thanks to Eric for asking me to be on commentary both yesterday and today. Just a fantastic event. Cascadia has been a huge success this year and looking forward to more Netrunner in the future.
Yo, real quick, also, it looks like we're going to get the interview. This might sound hard to hear because the microphone's pretty bad, but we're going to try and talk with William from across the country. So hold on. We'll get him on comms in just a moment. Maybe even also Joe. It'd be nice to talk to Joe. I'm getting pings in Discord. Give me 1 second. He's on his way. Give me a minute. Okay. We're going to be there in just a second. Woo! I also want to give a huge thank you to all the damage we have done to Whiteblade's laptop. It's probably lost about 2 to 3 years of its shelf life. He's going to have a hard time playing Lies of P and doing his Destiny 2 raids, but what's important is that we were able to watch some great Netrunner from all across the world.
Yeah, huge thanks to Eric's laptop in particular.
From all across the world. We hear you, man.
Yeah, huge thanks to Eric's laptop in particular.
From all across the world. We hear you, man.
Yeah, huge.
Oh, no. Oh, stream can't hear you? Beans. Okay, for those who are listening, you probably can't hear Eric. I think that's a problem. Let us know in chat if you can hear Eric. He's trying to sort it out on his side. But we're going to see if the interview makes sense. I want to shout out, if you can't get an interview now, Sokka234 on YouTube, go over there, give a subscribe. He does streaming. He puts up his videos. He'll probably have like a YouTube live talking about the event. Go give him a like.
Do the best you can. Can you guys can stream? Can you hear me now? Just let me know if you can.
Go give him a like. Stream chat, we can hear you. Stream chat,
can you guys
can
stream?
Yeah, they can.
Now?
Hell yeah.
Let me know if you can hear me. Okay, cool. I'm just gonna talk briefly. I've been running the stream all weekend with the help of Alec. Alec provided the camera equipment. I've been running the stream the best I can. It's my first time streaming, so it was exciting. I want to give a big thanks out to Mox for the event space. It was incredibly. They gave the event space to us for free, and that was really awesome. And CT, I want to give a big thanks out to all my staff, Alec, Clayton, Justin, Cephalopod Wizard, who did the stream, who did the judging all tournament. That was incredible. I want to give a shout out to CTZ, who helped the stream on 7 different occasions after it broke. I want to give a big shout out to Peter H, Andre, and Yasendra and Jeff. They all did such an incredible job in commentary. It was a very slapdash setup, and they did incredible work with what I gave them. And so I want to say thank you. I thank you for NSG for giving us the West Coast Nationals. And I want to thank our players and our viewers. I mean, it was really awesome to stream the event for people and to have people chime in. We were the largest NANP. I think we're going to end up being the largest non-world event in North America this year.
I'll come on August 24th to Montreal and NPC.
Well, Montreal and NPC, I would love to come. If you buy my flight.
Yeah, okay.
It was an awesome honor to run this event, and we'll do Cascadia again next year. And we got to see some great narratives. So thank you for both of you for commentating. That was awesome.
Hey, cheers! Our pleasure.
Yeah, I'm gonna close this audio channel for me. Will should be calling in just a minute. He's in the chat. One sec. He's in the call. Will, can you speak for us?
Yeah, I can. What's up?
Yo, congratulations! 2 weeks in a row. How you feeling, man?
Oh, I feel relieved. I felt a lot of pressure because it was just self pressure because I'm coming into this 5 out of 5 on nationals. So I'm I have this nationals win streak and I've never attended a nationals and not finished first. So I was I need to win this. And that was we just gotta there's no other reason. I just have this streak and we gotta do this for that reason. And I feel like Ranji in his write-up at Cascadia or his write-up at Worlds said something he just felt like there was some kind of higher power watching over him. And honestly, my egg games, I think my lat games were all I think I played well and I found those wins. But most of my egg games this weekend were insane.
They were really good.
In the very first round of the tournament, I play against an Arasana, and my turn 3 is I end my turn 3 with 5 agendas in hand, and on the runner's turn, they install Bones with World Tree and trash my Naked, Lacosta, Charlotte, and Void. Because last turn they ran, I had to boop them with the ice, and then I couldn't find another ice, so then they Bones all of that, and I have 5 agendas in hand, and I find my way to winning that game, and I that just happens so many times this weekend. In the cut and against Payu, I was against Freedom, and it was Hermes Freedom, and I was cooking this Nisei in the remote. I've nobody scored an agenda. I'm cooking this Nisei, and I thought that HQ was secure. Turns out HQ got compromised by Devil Charm and Crew, and a run gets made on HQ on click 3, and my hand is 3 agendas and Hansei and Subliminal, and the runner accesses Hansei, Freedom trashes it, runs back and accesses the Subliminal.
Yoy.
And if they hit an agenda, then they bounce my double advanced Nisei, and I just straight lose the game.
I think we saw there in the finals game, the one big run that Joe made on HQ when you were cooking the first Nisei, half the hand was agendas there, wasn't it?
That's right. Yeah, it was a 50-50. Yeah, I had 2 agendas and I had 2 non-agendas that run. That was a huge run. Yeah.
I think popping the border control is a bit too much of a tell there, and then you have some problems. Were you considering it? You just have to hope that holds, I take it.
No, yeah. You have to hope that holds. Because it's my first agenda. Agenda. I don't actually have good ice in hand. I think if I had an Anansi in hand, then you can pop it maybe and follow up with a big good ice. But all the ice that I had was tattoos and thimble rigs, and I had a single Sisentan, which cost the runner 3 credits. And Joe was running very aggressively, so I think a couple credits here and there, ultimately isn't gonna stop them from running. But they can certainly add up.
For sure. So speaking about Solomir, mind you, I think the only matchup this whole weekend you lost on turn 2. You had 4 clicks before the game was over.
Yeah. I almost went a whole tournament winning every round I played.
How do you feel
Um,
rematching that at the tables at the finals for the bracket reset? We saw that early, like equal on the table. I know we were talking about whether you steal it or not. Obviously, there's like threat 3 interactions, and it's a bit cheaper with the overclock. How are you feeling going into that matchup? Are you dreading it, or are you liking diving deep into the Thule?
I think I um I think I like am great into the Thule. Charlie, I was talking to Charlie earlier, Santa, and he was like, I think that's not a problem. I'm like, I don't think so. But it's fine. Yeah, I think every time I played against the Thule, it's not been too much of a match. Like because I feel like their econ is not reliable.
Hmm.
So if you like get the Parisha down and like keep cards in your hand and like run their econ, like usually their econ falls apart. So that was the game plan going into both of the games. And then yeah, in winners finals, which was off stream, I there's basically a turn where on the turn 2 of the game, I install Anacam, my laundry archives, and then I have 3 cards in hand, and I was just like, I have this Parisha that I installed on turn 1, and I was like, I want to get Parisha value.
Yeah.
So I run one of the new cards he installs. Turns out it was a false lead. And then I have to trigger Thule triggers. So I have to lose a click or and pay 2 credits or take a core, both of which leads me to death to distributed tracing and end of the line, which is like end of the line's a one of, so
Yeah.
it's like I guess I have to play super safe and then let you score the false lead, and then the game gets a little trickier. But yeah, in the finals, in the finals that was on stream, that's kind of what you're going for. Is you're just like I failed to keep cards in hand to not die to like a perfect end of the line combo
Yeah.
in the first game. So in the finals, I was just like, I just got to keep that in mind. And you're just generally just checking the board. Like, don't run centrals. You don't need to like steal agendas out of centrals if you don't need to. Because like cards on the board is what the corp is trying to hurt you with. And yeah, I mean, like I don't know if I even used Parisha at all that game because
Yeah, maybe
I
I don't
once,
think you
but
did.
not a lot. Yeah.
yeah, because I was just like SMC overclock, and the plan for that. This is what you should do against every asset deck playing any shaper with Parisha. I guess is you install SMC and then you overclock or you trick shot and then you SMC for Parisha and then you spend the remainder of the credits to trash the thing you're currently accessing and then you
Yep.
run a different server and then you use Parisha to trash the other thing. And that was the plan. And then we found 3 points. And the thing is,
I was
like
surprised
in
to
this
see it.
matchup, like I was super surprised, but like you just have to pivot at that point because it's too good. Like the deck is playing 2 Ikawas and 3 orbitals and 1 luminal, so there's a lot of real 2-pointers in there.
Yeah.
So as long as you find a 3-pointer, then you only need 2 2-pointers to win. So from there, I can just if I just take the Ikawa, then I can probably just like basically ignore the things that you're installing and like take a poke here or there on centrals. Like I'm just like trying to find this one more 2-pointer, and like I have 2 deep dives in the deck, and that can find it as well. So it was a very quick game plan pivot, and then I'm pretty sure I didn't use the Parisha at all.
Hey, speaking of game plan pivot, right? Like quick game plan pivot. We've seen the Ag Infusion deck. You've been changing it over the last couple of months. That's been kind of like the deck that you've been playing at a lot of events. And I know that deck got faster. You moved away from Biovaults, and there's a lot of reasons to push that way. But when it comes to this lat deck, I feel like the changes from week to week to week have been a bit more subtle. I think we're now on 2 revolvers. For those who've been like following the sort of like boring lat deck, as you call it, what did you bring into this event, and why? How has it changed for what reasons?
So you can get revolver taxed against Jintekis. So if Jinteki, especially Egg Infusion, plays 3 Size and 10 and 3 Anansi, which they all do, you can get taxed out of revolver counters because they can like put 2 sentries on a remote, put an unres dice behind it, and then put a sentry in R&D, and now you need to spend 9 revolver counters to like not get anywhere. So that's one problem. The second problem is just playing more of the like super cheap breakers improves your PD matchup.
Oh yeah.
So originally with the deck, I started with 1 pressure spike, and then pressure spike is great. It's especially good if you're against Pharaohs, but you can't break Bran at all until you get to threat 4, and then once you do, it still costs 5 credits. So, um, so yeah. So then I think one of the later tournaments, I went to one pressure spike, run propeller, and the thinking is that I can have this flexibility with the propeller to break early brands, and then have the pressure spike for late game. And then eventually, I just realized that you can just simul-chip these propellers, and with 2 propellers and simul-chips, like that's enough.
Yeah, it goes
And
pretty far.
you just need to know like when you need to run and when you don't need to run. So now I'm on 2 propellers, 2 revolvers, and 1 unity, and now the deck is really good against PD because the breaker suite is very efficient and it's super cheap to break things. So you can contest very early and very well. And yeah, I think like as I said, like the key to the lat deck is just your resources are limited. Your money, your power counters, everything is limited. So you just need to know when to run, when you don't need to run. Like you need to squeeze every bit of value out of everywhere that you can. And sometimes if you don't do that correctly, then you can find yourself running out of resources.
Right. Super cool. Again, huge congratulations for an absolute, again, 2 weeks in a row, nationals to nationals is absolutely wild. I don't think that's existed before, an in-person nationals play on that level. So Sokka, congratulations for sure. Real quick before we have to shut the stream down, is there any shout outs you want to make?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I start with the 2 of you. I mean, and everybody else that has commentated. I didn't even know that we would have commentators. I didn't even know we would have a stream, to be honest. So yeah, so this was great. So thank you for streaming, thank you for commentating.
Of course.
Huge shout out to Eric. Eric ran a great event. He has put a lot of work into the organizing, into getting the venue, setting up streams, setting up everything. So he ran an awesome event. And then yeah, shout out to my team. The Future Perfect. We test a decent amount, and we play a lot of games. And of course to Wiki, who I'm sure is asleep right now, but she'll wake up in the morning to some good news and probably rewatch the VOD.
I saw her in chat just a bit, so she's definitely watching for part of that. That's
really?
phenomenal. Yeah,
It's
earlier
like
on.
It's like 7:45 a.m. right now.
Yeah, good morning or good evening, I guess. But no, yeah, she was watching at some part, which is great. Awesome. On that note,
see, the problem with all of this Netrunner content during the day in the North Americas is destroying her sleep schedule. That's in Thailand.
I think on that note, I'm hoping this VOD will end up saved somewhere, so we'll have a lot to watch in the near future. But again, Sokka, thanks so much. And a huge thank you again to all the organizers for this event. I know we have to shut the stream down. The Moxes might be closing down on a Sunday, but again, congratulations and thanks so much to everyone who's watching. Also, thanks for taking the time, to all the organizers. And we'll be back. Next year, there'll be a Cascadia 2025. We hope to see you all there.
Thanks, everyone. See you later.
Cheers.